Chapter 73, Conferment. Chapter 73, Conferment. Xiao Qie did not accept the imperial edict. Fuman did not dare to persuade him further and hurried his way back to the palace to make his report. After hearing the whole story, Li Jianheng leapt to his feet and said, "Is the Son of Heaven's orders something he can reject as he pleases? When I reward him, he should kneel and accept it." "Go again." Griping to himself, Fuman climbed onto the horse again and returned to Xiao Qie's residence. Seeing Xiao Qie still kneeling, he hurriedly held the imperial edict and bowed to persuade him. Viceroy, why do this? Didn't we roll and crawl down there in the ditches all for this?" With a hint of displeasure on his face, Xiao Qie said, "I don't want this noble rank. Don't bother wasting your breath on me." Fuman was so anxious and desperate that he stomped his foot where he stood. But he could not accept the edict on behalf of Xiao Qie. All he could do was to play for time. Then let him kneel. Back at the palace, Li Jianheng promptly flew into a rage when he heard the reply. "In order to grant him the reward, I even rebuffed the Secretariat elder, and he still dares to put on airs? Let him kneel." So the sovereign and his minister, one within the palace and the other, beyond, remained stuck in a deadlock. At present, it was the third lunar month in spring, and the ground was icy cold all over. Xiao Qie kneeled with a straightened back, determined to get Li Jianheng to revoke his order. Perhaps he could have accepted the edict, then used various means to handle this matter in a better way. But he was not willing to. The Lu clan in Chidong was held in check by the Qi clan at the top and invaded by Bianxia at the bottom. Li Jianheng had been gunning for the easier target when he trampled upon Lu Pingyang, because the Lu clan was not on par with the Qi and Xiao clans. The food and clothing expenditures of those 20,000 troops of the Bianxia commandery were all in the imperial court's control. They did not even have military fields. Otherwise, the Lu clan would not have to stoop so low as to demand payment every year, or be so poor that they had to sell their family properties and belongings. In the past, when Lu Guangbai entered the capital to make his report, he was never taken seriously. Which typical official in the capital would have such audacity? They were all merely taking their cues from the higher-ups. When Emperor Xianda was around, it was rare for Lu Guangbai to be able to seek an audience with the emperor. This was not simply a matter of him being liked or detested, but because it concerned the balance of Chidong's military power. The Xiao and Qi were both great generals stationed at the frontiers. Why did the Hua clan have to guard against the Prince of Libei alone and go to so much trouble to trap Xiao Qie in Kudu? Because the Xiao clan was the only dominant force in Libei Great Commandery. There was no other leash in the entire territory that could reign in the Xiao clan, so they could only tie up Xiao Qie and turn him into a cage to restrain the Libei armored cavalry. Chidong had two generals, Qi Shiyu and Lu Pingyang, who were on par with one another back in those days. But why was Qi Shiyu eventually the one who was conferred with the title of the Five Commanderies Commander-in-Chief? This was all because Lu Pingyang and Xiao Fengshu were on close terms with one another, and they were in-laws to boot. The Lu clan was the chess piece that provided checks and balances to the power between the three parties. The Lu clan's position in the Bianjuan Commandery was crucial. It was a heavy responsibility entrusted to them by the imperial court. But even so, the imperial court did not generously bestow titles and ranks upon them. This was meant to hold the Lu in their control and let the Lu be held in check by both the Qi clan and the imperial court. The Lu could only be a weapon used to fight the foreign enemies. There was no way they could be high-ranking provincial officials with military authority at the borders, and consequently, there would be no way they could be the second prince of Libei. At present, Lu Guangbai had to consult Qi Zhuyin for the use of troops and consult the Ministry of War and Ministry of Revenue in Kudu for the use of money. Lu Guangbai was the commanding general in charge of the Bianjuan Commanderist defenses. If Qi Zhuyin had not been generous in delegating authority and gave him the prerogative to self-deploy troops in times of peril, then he would be even more of a predicament than he was at present. This time, Li Jianheng advanced Lu Pingyang's noble rank, yet there was no actual promotion taking place. Thus, the Lu clan could only remain perpetually hungry cattle and continue to work to their deaths at the Bianjuan Commandery. Their reputation had gone up a notch on the surface, but it was actually an insult deep down. Half of the Lu clan's current difficulties had to do with the Xiao clan, therefore, Xiao Qie must not accept the edict without so much a gesture. The fact that the imperial edict could be issued made it clear that the Grand Secretariat had given the nod. In that case, it was certain that this order would not be revoked. There was no reason for the Son of Heaven to change his order. But Xiao Qie definitely must not accept it with great delight. Even if he had to kowtow and act unreasonably, or even throw a tantrum, he had to show the Lu clan his stance. It was by virtue of power and might that Li Jianheng could trample all over the Lu clan, because the imperial court had the Lu in their grasp. In contrast, it was by virtue of friendship that the Xiao clan did not dare to do the same, because both families had always considered the other brother. If this friendship were to break up, then the Xiao clan would lose their assistive force in the southeast. Xiao Qie kneeled until it was dark. Fuman did not dare to sit down arbitrarily and stood at the side with the imperial edict in his hands. After an unspecified amount of time, they heard the sound of hurried footsteps from the entrance. An eunuch arrived and conveyed the orders in an urgent tone. "Viceroy, you may stop kneeling. Please get up. His Majesty summons you for an audience." Without demur, Xiao Qie lifted the hem of his robe to get up and got onto his horse to leave. Fuman hurriedly got onto his horse as well, not daring to grouse when he saw Xiao Qie not showing any signs of exhaustion. Mingli Hall was brightly illuminated. Li Jianheng sat on the dragon throne and listened as someone announced Xiao Qie's arrival. But he did not summon the latter in and remained seated to trace characters. Without being summoned, Xiao Qie could not enter, so he could only kneel outside Mingli Hall. It was already late, and the leftover cold water on the freshly scrubbed floor dampened his robe. The entire courtyard of eunuchs moved quietly, not daring to make a sound. Li Jianheng stared blankly at the glazed lamp. He had been thinking a lot this silent night. By the time he returned to his senses, it was already the hour of Cho. He sat for a moment, then suddenly rose to his feet and walked out. The palace maids withdrew, and the eunuchs kneeled on the ground. The shadows on the ground were trodden upon. Xiao Qie did not lift his head. Li Jianheng looked down at Xiao Qie. In the past, he was always looking up at Xiao Qie. When they were hanging out on the streets together, Xiao Qie could be said to be his big brother. They called each other brothers, and they played the fool a lot too. Li Jianheng thought he treated Xiao Qie with his utmost sincerity. How did they get to where they were today? Li Jianheng was dressed in a bright yellow, round-necked robe with narrow sleeves. With his hands on the amber belt on his waist, he moved over to Xiao Qie's side and looked at the luminous moon above the majestic palace eaves. He mulled it over for a moment, then said, "There's no one else here at the moment. Let's talk." The cold moonlight cast a blanket over them, effusing a chill along with the wind. Li Jianheng said, "Aren't you usually a bold one? To think giving you a noble rank this time can also scare you to such an extent." Xiao Qie said, "It's incompatible with reason and intolerable under the law." Li Jianheng paced and said, "Don't give me that. You have never been one to talk about reason. Before the Nanlin hunting grounds incident, we were still good brothers who would risk our lives for the other. After the Nanlin hunting grounds incident, we truly became the monarch and his minister, separated by a huge rift. Xian, isn't it good for me to be the emperor and for you to be the viceroy? Why do you have to put on a front with me like this? Just accept the rewards you are awarded with. Cowering like this is really unlike you, Xiao Xian." Xiao Qie could tell what he meant and said, "If your majesty wants to reward me with gold and treasures, I'll promptly kowtow and say my thanks. But not for a noble rank. I've served as an official for 6 years, and I do not have any notable achievements or mentionable merits in Kudu to show for or to speak of. I feel uneasy now that I have received your majesty's kindness and become a marquis at a sudden snap of a finger. What's there to be uneasy about?" Li Jianheng scoffed. "With our relationship, you should have been conferred a title a long time ago. The Grand Secretariat interferes with my every move, picking on anything and everything I do. I never had a chance to do this, no? This time, you've earned it. Earlier, when Lu Pingyang was conferred a title, it was also because he had effectively resisted and repelled the Biancha cavalry at the border. You protected the emperor in Kudu, and in that, ensured the safety of our empire and society. I see no difference between both. There's no rush since the Grand Secretariat has qualms about this. Xiao Qie said, we can't hurt the old officials' feelings. The older ones are always thick-headed and obstinate. Li Jianheng said, how can they be so inflexible? Even those in the flesh trade know when to be flexible and read the situation. But these major ministers are still holding on to broken pieces. How very meaningless. After this scare, I thought about a lot of things during my recuperation. Since I've become the emperor, it's not productive if I just keep crying and whining. We have to find some way to live on, right? I'm not an unreasonable man. Just voice it out if there is good reason to. It's not like I'll execute them. Like this time, I want to confer a title upon you, but the Secretariat elder didn't agree and led the others to make a scene before me, saying that I was hasty and sloppy in my decisions. I was so troubled over this matter that I spent nights tossing and turning, and they still say I'm hasty. Li Jianheng turned back as he was speaking, and the gold dragon on his crown flashed in the moonlight, giving him an imposing air of elegance and nobility. He did not tell Xiao Qie to rise. After a long pause, he continued. I'm the emperor, I can't renege on my word. Since the edict has been made, you just have to accept it. You've already rebuffed me once today, but we are brothers, so I won't hold it against you. But if you continue to be so stubborn with me again, then it won't be something that can be settled between brothers, and neither of us will look good for it. Deal? Xiao Qie was silent for a moment before he said, Your Majesty, that won't do. The inspection is around the corner. It's a good thing to advance old General Lu's noble rank, he deserves it. But not for me. It's for Your Majesty's reputation that I'm not accepting it. I'm someone Your Majesty single-handedly promoted. If I can't convince the masses in everything I do, then how can I still attend to official duties for Your Majesty in the future? Those who are in charge of military troops are all concerned about their reputation and dignity. If you give this dignity to old General Lu by showing him due respect, then I will subsequently come to benefit by association too. Are you making up all kinds of excuses to decline for my sake or for the Xiao clan? Do you really think I don't understand just because you didn't say it? Li Jianheng stared at him. We are brothers who should treat each other with candor and sincerity. Yet you keep treating me like a fool. It's for the sake of our friendship that I'm rewarding you, but you turned it down for your own selfish desire. I told you to be honest with me, and you are still beating around the bush with me. Xiao Qie, don't you have a conscience? This question Li Jianheng bellowed was so forceful that it faintly reverberated through the cold, dreary night. You're afraid of offending Lu Pingyang. Why is that? Li Jianheng suddenly flung his sleeves. And you still dare to say you're loyal to me? You are doing it all for yourself. You don't dare to say it, so I'll say it for you. You're afraid of offending Lu Pingyang and ruining the friendship between both your clans, which would make it hard for you to mutually look out for each other. But let me ask you, Xiao and Lu both have their own respective military forces to defend the borders, so what is there that you need to look out for each other for? Xiao Qie tightened his fists, with his thumb ring jammed in the area between his thumb and forefinger. All of you are wolves and tigers. Li Jianheng pointed at Xiao Qie. You people have your mind set on kudu. I was merely sounding you out, and you showed your true colors. Military powers gang up with one another, and the Xiao clan wants to be in the same faction as the Lu clan, and then what's next? Tell me, what are you going to do? Xiao Qie abruptly half-propped himself up. He had a well-built physique, and kneeling on one knee like this made him seem as if he was a panther ready to spring into an attack. Li Jianheng immediately took a few steps back and looked at him, badly shaken. Of course it's to do those Biancha baldies in. Xiao Qie's expression was fierce as he looked at Li Jianheng. 6 years ago, when the Zhongbua troops were defeated, my eldest brother rode non-stop through the night to come to the emperor's rescue. How dangerous that battle at Cizhou was. Meanwhile, Lu Guangbai held his spear in hand and a dagger in his mouth and fought for 3 nights before he could break through the siege. He immediately hurried over to Kudu without even stopping to rest to help Kudu out of their predicament. Everything Your Majesty had said today is an affront to the Xiao and Lu clans' loyalty. That's right, the reason I'm not accepting the noble rank today is because of Lu Pingyang, but even more because of the unwavering loyalty of the various generals at the frontiers. It's all because of your Majesty's kindness that I, Xiao Xian, a good-for-nothing, could live in this kudu without having to worry about my own life and death, nor stress about heading out to war. If I could even become a high and mighty marquis with this, then what would Commander Qi and General Lu, both of whom are still enduring hardships at the frontiers, think? After saying so much, you are just doing it for your own untainted reputation. Xiao Qie's words were firm and resounding. My life is worthless, but your Majesty is the ruler of our prosperous lands. If you were to reward me for this small bit of contribution and it ends up diminishing the general's loyalty to your Majesty, who would lose out more? Your Majesty, or I? Li Jianheng looked hesitant and doubtful. Xiao Qie refused to let this go and continued. If this is merely a show I put on to collude with the Lu clan, why did Secretariat Elder Hai try so hard to convince your Majesty? Your Majesty, you don't trust me, but don't you trust the Hai Liangyi whom the late Emperor appointed and who has come to the Emperor's rescue thrice? Your Majesty has repeatedly met with danger and misfortune, and immediately right after, you are disproportionately dishing out rewards. Whoever it is that's instigating and abetting your Majesty ought to be executed. It was as if Li Jianheng was suddenly jolted to his senses. He retreated under the eaves, held on to the vermilion pillar for support, and said, "But the imperial edict has already been issued. Your Majesty is the sovereign of a new reign and imperial court. It was inappropriate to bestow rewards during the state mourning period earlier. But now that the two great imperial affairs of spring plowing and inspection are in full swing, why not seize the chance to proclaim a general amnesty to the world and reward the various generals at the frontiers according to the merit evaluation from the Ministry of War? It's not just permissible to advance Lu Pingyang to the rank of Marquis of Bianxia. On the basis of the Lu clan's most number of enemy kills at the Bianjuan Commandery, they should be rewarded again with an increase of military provisions. Jueshi had a bumper harvest last year, and their granaries are filled to the brim. This would not only write off the state treasury's additional expenditure on dishing out monetary rewards, but also relieve the Bianjuan Commandery of their pressing needs. The wedding of old Commander Qi is fast approaching. Your Majesty, if you also reward and confer 3rd Missy Hua with the title of Commandery Princess, then you'd be raising Chidong's prestige." Xiao Qie's words were earnest, and his gaze, frank. "You are the sovereign of a great empire, the common ruler of all under the world. Who would still harbor any discontent when you bestowed such grace and favor all around? When Emperor Xianda ascended to the throne, the Empress Dowager was the one making the decisions for him, and consequently, he missed his opportunity to make such a big splash during his reign. The most pressing issue to Li Jianheng now was to prove himself as an emperor. He was suspicious and reacted to another's instigation only because he was afraid of being declared unworthy of his position. Xiao Qie's words simply pushed all his right buttons. "All right," with delight on his face, Li Jianheng came down again to move towards Xiao Qie. "Fine. Xian, get up quickly. It's cold on the ground." Fuman, who was kneeling at the bottom, listened with marvel. Who would have thought that in just a few hours, Xiao Qie would be able to seize the opportunity to deal a counterattack and avert the crisis? If not for having a firm grasp on Li Jianheng's temperament and mindset, he would never have been able to hit right on the target in just one blow. The more he thought, the more elated he was. There's hope for him if he throw in his lot with the second young master. Chapter 74, Toast Exchange. Chapter 74, Toast Exchange. The second month of the lunar year was crucial for planting mulberry and flax in spring. The various localities hurried to submit their reports and urged the Ministry of Revenue to allocate funds. With mountains of trivial affairs piling up, the various departments were so busy they were burned out from exhaustion. Li Jianheng dished out the rewards and conferments, and Xiao Qie was promoted to the rank of Marquis of Dingju. Meanwhile, Shen Zichuan received a skip in grade and was promoted to a 3rd-grade vice-commander. He also concurrently took up the portfolio of the Northern Judge and began to take charge of the imperial prison. The Grand Secretariat initially did not agree to this, but Center Yu submitted a memorial to make a strong case for a recommendation. Hai Liangyi also saw Shen Zichuan in a new light because of the epidemic, and so it was decided. Xiao Qie carried the earring case on him, but he never found the opportunity to run into Shen Zichuan. Shen Zichuan was on the go all over the imperial prison, having to go through all the cases accumulated before the new year one at a time. He was so busy he skipped sleep and meals. On the other side, he still had to get Xiao Tianya to lie in wait and keep a watch on Shi Hongxian so that he could find a way to get Qi Hualian and Ji Gang back. Young swallows made a ruckus on roof beams, while the young shoots of weeping willows spouted. The vermilion walls and green glazed tiles of kudu gradually showed as the weather remained clear and sunny for several days in a row. On the day when spring rain fell uninterrupted, Center Yu hosted a feast and invited a few friends from the latest incident. Hai Liangyi was not one to attend private banquets, and it just happened that he had yet to recover from his illness, so he did not partake in the feast. By the time Shen Zichuan arrived, it was already late. He was led straight to the main hall. When he lifted the curtain, he saw that it was full of officials who were familiar faces to him. Han Cheng, Kong Qiu, and Center Yu shared a table. Xiao Qie already had his third round of wine, and he was listening with propped arms to Yu Xiaozai, whose seat was at the bottom, telling jokes to an entire hall of important ministers. The moment Shen Zichuan entered, Yu Xiaozai hurriedly paid his obeisances and greeted him. "Your Excellency is late. Please hurry and have a seat at the head of the table." Shen Zichuan removed his cloak and said with a smile, "There's much to do in the imperial prison, so I'd like to ask of your excellencies to please bear with me. I'll sit at the bottom." Center Yu stood up and beckoned to him, saying, "Those etiquettes for public display won't work at private banquets. Once you are here, we are all friends despite our age differences. So why still stand on ceremony?" "Old Han, you tell him," Han Cheng said. "It's as he said. Lanju, come on up and sit here. The few of us old and useless ones have the honor of being in the company of the Marquis today too. Your lordship, you could be said to have lowered yourself for us. Commander-in-Chief, what you're doing is putting me down." Xiao Qie seemed to be a little drunk. He did not look at Shen Zichuan and merely smiled. "Who present here is not a respected elder? I'll still have to look to all of you for advice in the future." Shen Zichuan had already taken his seat, which was a little distance away from Xiao Qie across the table where he would be able to reach the latter if he stretched out his legs. Both men did not look at each other, nor did they greet the other. Kong Qiu looked left and right at them and said with a smile, "I've long heard that both of you have beef with each other. Why won't you even say a word on meeting each other? You worked on this assignment together, and it seemed all good to me. So why still take those past grudges to heart? The way I see it, both of you are young and promising, and you don't deflect the responsibility to each other when you're working. So why not take the chance today to bury the hatchet with a smile?" As Center Yu spoke, he raised his hands. "The imperial bodyguards and the imperial army have to mutually look out for each other, too. There are plenty of opportunities for both to continue working together in the future. Your lordship, what do you think? Would that do?" Xiao Qie lazily cast a look at Shen Zichuan. His gaze was indecipherable. He only said, "How would it not do for me? What is there that I can't do with a smile from His Excellency the Judge? I should say my proper thanks to His Excellency for this time too. When have I never greeted your lordship with a smile every time I see your lordship?" Shen Zichuan touched the wine cup. "I've long forgotten the past. It's just that there has been no opportunity before, isn't it?" Han Cheng was the one who had the most drinks with Xiao Qie. On seeing this, he picked up his chopsticks again and said as he picked out the food, "Then, let's have a drink. Your lordship, please do me the favor." Yu Xiaozai, who had not sat all this while, promptly filled both of their cups to the brim with wine. Xiao Qie held his cup with both hands and said without getting up, "Then, let's toast." Going by their official grades, it was indeed the case that Xiao Qie should not get up. Shen Zichuan stood up, revealing his wrist bones as he lifted his cup. Xiao Qie suddenly said, "Since this is wine to settle old grudges, then it naturally can't be drunk in such a common way. Judge, how about a nuptial exchange of matrimony wine?" One Han Cheng promptly laughed. He pointed at Xiao Qie and shook his head as he said with a sigh, "Your lordship, that's too unethical of you. Why put Lanju in a spot? How is this putting him in a spot?" Xiao Qie said, "I can't even begin to love and honor him. Aren't we doing all this as an expression of our determination?" Knowing Xiao Qie's temper, Senta Yu thought that Xiao Qie was still harboring animosity over Zhongbua and that he was intentionally making things difficult for Shen Zichuan. Just as he was prepared to speak up to dissuade Xiao Qie, Shen Zichuan laughed. "Sure," Shen Zichuan said. "We'll do as his lordship says." Shen Zichuan held up the cup and leaned over, where Xiao Qie could see his faintly discernible collarbone. Both men's arms intertwined. As Shen Zichuan drank the wine, his Adam's apple throbbed. Xiao Qie's gaze seemed to let out a gurgle too as it followed the wine down into that robe. Xiao Qie drank very slowly. He held the wine in his mouth, his gaze never once leaving Shen Zichuan. All the time his arm was hooked around Shen Zichuan's arm, Shen Zichuan could clearly feel his sturdiness. Xiao Qie seemed to let out a laugh when he finished drinking, but no one heard it, only Shen Zichuan lowered his eyes to look at him. His gaze was naked, and brimming over with dangerous desire. Shen Zichuan extracted his arm and sat back, his back dripping with sweat. Xiao Qie seemed unfazed as he put up his arms again and inclined his head to listen to the conversation. Senta Yu said, "After the spring plough, it'll be the spring examinations. The Imperial College wants to recruit new students this year. Looks like the Ministry of Revenue will be getting another headache." Kong Qiu snorted a laughter and said, "What would Wei Huaigu ache over? He's the money keeper. He ought to compute them. To begin with, all these should have been suitably arranged way earlier. For him to wait until now to do so is already considered a dereliction of duty. He's the money keeper, and you're the living king of hell." Han Cheng set down his chopsticks. Having had his fill of wine and meal, he said, "Zhongbua is in such a mess at present, and the number of cases submitted to the Ministry of Justice is as innumerable as the number of hairs on an ox. It won't do for them to keep delaying sending someone over to take charge of the situation there, would it? I think the Secretariat Elder is mulling over whom to send over." Senta Yu lamented. If Lanju formally joins the central administration as an official, then he might have a chance this time. Whether it was due to the heat or the wine, Shen Zichuan's face was a little red. He said, "I can't. I'm not qualified and experienced enough to be assigned out of the capital. I won't be able to quell the unrest. Just gain more experience and it'll be fine." With his interest piqued, Han Cheng said, "It is said that officials from the capital are wily. But how can the capital officials be as slippery and sly as the local officials? Some years ago, I went down with the Chief Surveillance Bureau to check the accounts, and all those capital lords and old masters were all very crafty and cunning. There were 2 copies of all the account books in their residences. Even if you, Senta Shuani, went, you would not be able to distinguish the real accounts from the fakes. Every year, when the Imperial Envoy heads down, there would be a great flurry of activities. Having long heard the news, they would drive out all the disaster victims and refugees in their territories before your arrival to prevent you from seeing them. This is the so-called no-hunger concern in the territory you see in the evaluations. Once you arrive, they would hold a banquet and think up reasons to dunk you with wine. You'd drink until daybreak, then sleep until nightfall. You'd be so drunk that you can't even stride out of the prefectural yamen. So what energy would you still have to check the accounts? Once the time is up, and the silver is in the pockets, the evaluation would be marked as outstanding. Then it's off to the next place to drink. And that's considered the end of the check. But there are still those who do their jobs. You can't taint them all with the same brush." With that, Senta Yu sighed again. When Xue Xiuzhua went down a few years ago, he was a formidable sight to behold. All the accounts of the 13 cities of Jueshi were sorted out in perfect order without a single error. I originally thought he would be assigned to the Ministry of Revenue. But who would have expected the Secretariat Elder to transfer him to the Court of Judicial Review instead? Can he get anywhere being Wei Huaigu's subordinate? Kong Qiu leaned against the chair. The current Vice Minister of the Ministry of Revenue exists in name only. Wei Huaigu alone calls the shot and has the final say in the overall management of financial affairs. Won't he be rendered useless if he goes over? The Secretariat Elder has the intent to polish him. He's meant to achieve great things in the future. Kong Qiu never had any social dealings with Wei Huaigu and Pan Xiangjie. That he was only friendly to them on the surface but estranged from them deep down was a fact everyone knew. So he was not afraid to speak out in Han Cheng's presence. Han Cheng laughed out loud and said, "Don't discuss state affairs at a private feast. How can you forget this? Old Kong, you ought to be punished." Thinking that they were almost done with their meals, Center Yu said, "When Yujing 3 returned a few days back, he told me about a game. It still seems early to me, so why don't we give it a try? Yujing, take those cards of yours out." Yu Xiaozai readily agreed in response. He took out a wooden box, opened it to take out small carved wooden cards and said, "This is something this humble subordinate saw others playing when I went to Yongi Harbor for supervision and inspection, matching cards to pair couplets." "Your Excellencies, give it a go." Han Cheng said to Xiao Qie, "I'm not good at playing literary games like these. Your Lordship, how about giving me some advice?" Xiao Qie drank his wine and said, "Does the Commander-in-Chief think so highly of me, Xiao Xian? Do I look like a man who reads? It's just for fun. Let's just go along with it. Yujing, deal the cards." Yu Xiaozai dealt the three of them the cards. Fiddling with his wine cup, Xiao Qie was just looking at the cards when something brushed against his calf. He paused suddenly and fixed his gaze on Han Cheng's cards. Han Cheng looked at his cards with a frown and said, "The heck are these flowers and plants putting me in a spot? Your Lordship, do you recognize this?" Xiao Qie said, "Throw them both a line based on the foxtail grass." I guarantee that foot with a clean sock tapped Xiao Qie's knee, and its sole stepped on his kneecap, as if testing the position. "Guarantee they'll be stumped." Han Cheng tossed a card out and said with a smile, "The swallow teases the foxtail, spring arrives." I randomly made up the first line of a couplet. So now, Shuani, pair it up. Han Cheng truly was not a learned man, but he did not let it hold him back. On hearing this, Kong Qiu and Center Yu laughed. While the three men were talking, Xiao Qie cast a look at Shun Zichuan. Shun Zichuan grasped his fan, a little moso bamboo fan that Xiao Qie had sent someone to deliver to him. He tapped the fan intermittently and listened intently to the conversation. As if sensing Xiao Qie's eyes on him, the corners of his eyes lifted in a little smile. That foot had already slid in between Xiao Qie's legs. It nudged against the inside of his thigh, as if wanting for more. Xiao Qie held the wine cup with his thumb pressed against the rim as he remained motionless. "Isn't it a fox?" After a while, Xiao Qie let out a laugh. He lifted his hand to pick out an ink-traced fox from Han Cheng's cards and tossed it onto the table. "Moist is the night as the rain seeps through my roof, sultry is the fox's song in my dream. Where to seek the tide of spring? That wet, persistent drip is the hint, sorry for the obscenity." Han Cheng exchanged toasts with Xiao Qie, then laughed and said, "We are being serious here, but why is it that you just had to turn a fox into a vixen when it's your turn?" A foot reached out from under the table. Its toe slowly slid up Xiao Qie's calf, playing back and forth a few times along the curve of his calf. "But men like me," Xiao Qie drank his wine and looked at Shun Zichuan, "simply attract foxes. How is any respectable person able to continue with that? It's too crude." Kong Qiu laughed and sighed. "You, Xiao Xian, don't even close the door tight when you sleep, and you still blame the others for looking for you. You're obviously looking forward to it yourself, right?" Xiao Qie did not say a word. But when that foot stepped down on him gently, he laughed. The upper half of Shun Zichuan's body was so steady that nothing seemed off. He rubbed his fingertips, which had been tapping on the fan. In this room full of heat, even the corners of his eyes were about to redden. It just so happened that Center Yu threw the card onto the ground. Yu Xiaozai quickly stopped what he was doing and made to lean over to pick it up. Shun Zichuan prepared to retract his foot. But unexpectedly enough, Xiao Qie reached his hand down to grab hold of his ankle. His sole was stepping on Xiao Qie's unmentionable spot through the fabric. Xiao Qie slipped 2 fingers into the clean sock and stroked Shun Zichuan. Shun Zichuan's fan rested on the tabletop. Yu Xiaozai had already lifted the hem of his robe and his waist was already slightly bending over as he said, "Your Excellencies, please lift your legs. Let this humble subordinate see where it has dropped to." Xiao Qie was not the slightest bit flustered as he steadily grasped onto Shun Zichuan's ankle. He exerted a little force with his thumb, caressing Shen Zhechuan until Shen Zhechuan felt a tingle of numbness run up his spine and tightened his grip on his fan. Chapter 75, Night Ride. Chapter 75, Night Ride. Yu Xiaozai held the hem of his robe up and was about to squat down when Xiao Qie let his wine cup drop. Han Cheng, being near, ended up having his robe dirted. Yu Xiaozai left the cards and went to get a handkerchief for Han Cheng to clean himself. Center Yu was still squinting at his cards when the wine splashed him. He hastily tried to dodge it too, making Kong Qiu laugh loudly. Han Cheng tugged at his robe and said to Xiao Qie, "Your lordship, you've had too much to drink, even your hands are unsteady now." Xiao Qie raised his hand in apology and said, "Apologies, I'll get someone to send you a replacement tomorrow as compensation." "There's no need. Just how much is a set of robes worth?" How could Han Cheng really let Xiao Qie compensate him? He did not even dare to pull a long face as he said with a smile, "We'll treat this cup as a toast from your lordship." Shen Zhechuan had already withdrawn his foot. He leaned over and picked up the card from the floor. As he placed it on the table, he heard Xiao Qie laughing. The lingering warmth on his ankle where Xiao Qie had squeezed grew hotter amidst the laughter. Kong Qiu was already drunk. He looked completely opposite of how he usually did when he was in court as he struck a porcelain cup with his chopsticks and sang out incomprehensible lyrics alone in the chaotic atmosphere. Center Yu, seeing Kong Qiu stir up such an improper and unsightly ruckus, tugged on his sleeve and said, "Boren, stop singing. Let's go home and sleep. You still need to sit in Shi Hongshuan's trial the day after tomorrow." Kong Qiu held up his cup, struck it with increasing glee, and said, "I remember that. I'm investigating him." Center Yu could not keep a hold of him and said, "Thankfully, I was the one who invited you to the feast today, or else you would be impeached for sure for behaving in such an audacious, unrestrained manner." "Okay then, let them impeach," Kong Qiu said, "let them impeach. Imperial censors ought to have the courage to speak." "Right, well said." Han Cheng also laughed. "Before spring, we were saddled with such a massive pile of work that we could scarcely breathe. How many times could we enjoy ourselves to the greatest? Let him enjoy himself to his heart's content. It's almost time to wind down. If we make a ruckus too late into the night, the Secretariat Elder won't be happy with us." Xiao Qie got to his feet and called to Chen Yang, "Send His Excellency Kong back in my horse carriage." The attendants swarmed all around, and Chen Yang helped Kong Qiu out the door. Center Yu wiped away his hot sweat and said to the remaining men, "You don't know this, but Boren was also once an unconventional and uninhibited person, but because Secretariat Elder is particularly set on self-restraint and observance of proprieties, he put him in order and whipped him into shape. It's not advisable to drink too much of this wine. Why doesn't everyone wait for a moment while I'll tell the cook to boil some soups to sober you up? Drink it up before you leave. I was just thinking about your residence's dough drop and assorted vegetable soup." Han Cheng forewent the formalities. "Add some vinegar to mine. I'll drink it before leaving." Shen Zhechuan bowed and said, "The imperial prison still has urgent cases to be processed tomorrow morning, so I won't stay. Everyone, please enjoy your meal. If time permits in the future, I'll invite everyone for another round." Han Cheng knew that he was indeed busy of late and told him, "When you previously held the post of the southern judge, the military craftsman kept a close eye on you. Now that you've transferred to the office of the northern judge, there's no need for you to rush between both ends until you are too busy to do anything else. The subordinates will remember your kind treatment of them and naturally won't make things too difficult for you." Shen Zhechuan uttered a sound of acknowledgement. Center Yu insisted on sending him off. It would not do for Shen Zhechuan to decline, so they walked out of the doors together. It was raining heavily outside, and everything was covered in a thick layer of fog. The drift of fresh air on their faces dispelled the wine-induced heat from their bodies, making them feel much more refreshed. Center Yu led Shen Zhechuan down the stairs and said, "To find time to attend the feast tonight, you must have pushed back a great deal of work." "Not quite. The urgent cases that need to be dealt with have been sealed and finalized before today." Shen Zhechuan replied with a smile. Center Yu nodded and said, "That's good. Assignments cannot be delayed." Center Yu accompanied him all the way to the gates and then ordered someone to hold up an umbrella and lantern for him. He truly valued Shen Zichuan for his talents, but it was a pity that Shen Zichuan served in the imperial bodyguards. Finally, Center Yu said, all the cases in the imperial prison are major cases that not even the 3 judicial offices can interfere with. You could be said to have enjoyed a meteoric rise with this position, so you must speak with caution and act with prudence. It is often said that being close to the sovereign is as perilous as lying with a tiger. Those who can handle affairs in the presence of the emperor are all born intelligent and quick-witted. That said, you needn't worry too much about qualification, for you are already considered to have reached success in your youth. You still have a long time to go and a long way ahead of you, so remember, there is no need to be anxious about anything else other than your assignments. The Marquis of Dingdu is not a narrow-minded man either. You are bound to have to work together on missions in the future. The hatchet has been buried tonight with wine. Even if you cannot become soulmates with him, it's still better to be friends who can look out for each other than to fly into a rage each time you meet each other. Lanju, I value your talent, and I hope that you will work hard and achieve success in your career. Center Yu bared his heart out with such sincerity that Shen Zichuan was wholeheartedly convinced. He bowed, and Center Yu helped him up again, saying, the road is slippery on rainy nights. Be careful on your way. You may go. Shen Zichuan draped the pristinely white fur coat that Li Jianheng had bestowed on him and bade farewell to Center Yu. He did not get in the sedan, but let Xiao Tianya hold up the umbrella for him as one master and one servant walked into the rain. The two had not been walking along the streets for long when they heard the sound of hoofbeats behind them. Xiao Tianya shook the rainwater off before stepping aside, and as expected, saw Xiao Qie on horseback galloping towards them at full speed. Good timing. Xiao Tianya did not even get to finish his sentence as Xiao Qie bent to pick Shen Zichuan up and left with him. The water droplets kicked up by the horses' hooves splashed all over Xiao Tianya. He spread his arms open and slowly finished his sentence. Want to drink some xiaojiu? One Xiao Qie was well built. Even with Shen Zichuan in his arms, he did not find it inconvenient. It was in this way he hugged Shen Zichuan as he effortlessly rode his horse away. The chest backing Shen Zichuan was firm and muscular, as if it was an indestructible iron wall of silver. Lang Dao Shui Jin galloped into the rain like a bolt of lightning flashing through the pitch-black rainy night. It trod into countless puddles of water, splattering them as it charged straight for the city gates. Who goes there riding his horse this late in the night? The guard at the top of the wall raised his lantern and demanded. Xiao Qie pulled at his cloak to wrap Shen Zichuan under it before raising his own waist token. He said, "Open the gates." Vice Marquis. The platoon commander at the top of the wall immediately paid his obeisances, then waved his hands and ordered, "Quick, open the gate." The gates opened with a loud rumble, and Lang Dao Shui Jin galloped straight out. With the night wind whipping against their cheek, Lang Dao Shui Jin galloped faster and faster, while a circling gerfalcon charged out from the rain and followed closely behind. Shen Zichuan held onto the back of the horse and said, "We can't go too far." Tomorrow morning, Xiao Qie grabbed Shen Zichuan's chin, pulled it toward himself, and tilted his head to kiss him. Shen Zichuan was not gifted at horsemanship, and other than Xiao Qie, he had nowhere else to hold on to as they raced forth like the wind. With one hand pressing against the jerking back of the horse and the other clutching onto Xiao Qie's body for support, there was no way for him to look at the road in front. The pitter-pattering rain wetted his eyes as they kissed. They had not seen each other for 7 or 8 days. Xiao Qie embraced Shen Zichuan tightly with one hand, pressing him to his chest as he kissed down along his cheek to the side of his neck. Shen Zichuan's clothes were in disarray. The official robe beneath his white fur coat had been tugged open slightly. When he lifted his eyes, all he could see was the jet-black rainy night. The water droplets trickled down along the curve into his collar, drenching his clothes, and even himself. His caresses wrinkled Xiao Qie's robe even as Xiao Qie made him gasp for breath. The rain poured even harder and noisier as Lang Dao Shui Jin ran blindly into the night. The path in front of them was already hidden in the long, dark night, and the horse was like the lone boat carrying a pair of lovers on a secret rendezvous. Shen Zichuan closed his eyes while taking all of it, shivering while bathed in sweat and rainwater. Xiao Qie did not say a word as the horse's hooves trod on mud. The path was so uneven and hard to navigate that a few ensuing bumps and jolts caused the sounds to escape from Sun Zichuan's throat. Xiao Qie was also sweating a little. Spurred on by the potent wine, he grasped Sun Zichuan amidst this frenzy of pleasure, making every rise and fall hit just the right spot. He was in even more high spirits after drinking wine, and he used his strength skillfully, making Sun Zichuan incapable of resisting and unable to escape. Does the friction feel good? Seeing that Sun Zichuan wanted to lean away, Xiao Qie clasped his hands and pulled him back in an embrace. Pressed against him, Sun Zichuan said, Xiao Qie said, next time, I'll grind the right spot. Xiao Qie stroked Sun Zichuan's earlobe and fastened an object. He pushed aside those drenched locks of hair and kissed it. As Sun Zichuan raised his head, the jasper swayed with his movement. He dazedly touched the pendant. Several times, he opened his mouth to speak, but he was always disrupted by his gasps for breath. As he rode on the tidal waves of euphoria, he gazed at Xiao Qie with a contradictory blend of understanding and incomprehension. Xiao Qie killed off the only remaining tenderness he had left. It was really bad for the spring days to warm up again after a cold spell, for this was the season to have fun. Scoundrels all like having fun. As long as they were together, they could create a stir where there was none. The suggestive look in their eyes when their gazes met and the tingle of numbness that sprang up their spines was so strong that they itched to tantalize the other into ripping apart his mask of decency. No one understood the debauchery taking place underneath their official robes. As long as there was no one else, they would show their true colors. Chapter 76, Casting the Net. Chapter 76, Casting the Net. The night rain had just stopped, but the sensual dampness between the beddings lingered. The hot springs had been renovated anew, although it was small, it was completed. With his clothes draped over him, Xiao Qie fed the horse and gerfalcon. All that could be heard on Mount Feng at the third quarter of the hour of Marrowan was the sound of water dripping from the eaves. He soaked in the mountain breeze for a moment with the front of his clothes opened. The chill of early spring gradually calmed the stimulation and excitement that had lasted all night. He had sobered up, but his passion had become all the more thick and viscous, followed by a kind of post-indulgence relaxation and tenderness. This was the pleasure of indulging in desire. Xiao Qie removed the saddle on Lang Dao Shuejin's back and gestured to Meng. Meng promptly spread its wings and flew out of the eaves into the forest. Xiao Qie turned around to enter the room, where the heat and dampness had not receded. Sun Zichuan was sprawled over the pillow with the blanket over him. There was no way to tell if he was asleep or not. His half-exposed right ear was still wearing the earring. Xiao Qie lowered his hand to take it off for him and, in passing, rubbed his ear that had gone red from being clasped by the earring. Sun Zichuan let loose a sound. He had yet to fall into a sound sleep. He laid there for a moment, then slightly opened his eyes to look at Xiao Qie and said in a hoarse voice, "It's time we leave." Xiao Qie rolled over and lay down beside Sun Zichuan. He looked at him in the eye and said, "It's the day off today. It's still early." Sun Zichuan uttered a sound of acknowledgement and said, "There is still work to be done in the imperial prison." A busy man. Xiao Qie grasped his fingertips and pulled him towards himself. "In just one day, you rose to the position of Northern Judge, and you were also promoted to Vice Commander. The people you have to deal with now are all noble descendants of hereditary ranks. It's going to be hard for you to manage them. There's bound to be someone who wants to trip you up with underhand means." Sun Zichuan said, "It's not easy to be the son of heaven and the officials in his inner ministerial circle." It was in this way Sun Zichuan lay, with the word satiated written all over his expression. Both men looked at each other for a moment. Like the gentleness after a rainstorm, their kiss was both light and slow. In this humble thatched cottage, they wholeheartedly bared themselves to one another. It was as if in these few hours they left Kudu, they could cast aside all the so-called maturity and prudence to become young men of similar ages. Xiao Qie whispered, "This place is too small, with the view of the sky all blocked by vermilion walls, and the mountains and plains all surrounded by cities. Lang Dao Shuejin can't run to its heart's content. When we return to Libei someday in the future, I'll take you galloping all over Hongyang Mountains." Sun Zichuan pressed against his chest and asked, "Is the moon in Libei as round as the moon in Duanzhou?" Xiao Qie thought for a long while before he said, I've already forgotten. Is the grass in Duanzhou as tall as the grass in Libei? Shun Zichuan also said, I've already forgotten. They suddenly burst out into laughter, dispelling that bit of melancholy. Shun Zichuan took in Xiao Qie's scent as Xiao Qie pressed his chin against the top of Shun Zichuan's head. Xiao Qie said, let's go together. Shun Zichuan said, home? Xiao Qie tightened his arms around Shun Zichuan and said, home. Let's ask Ji Gangshifu to go together with us. Libei is so big, there will be plenty of places to stay. Shun Zichuan laughed out loud and said with lowered eyes, Shifu wants to return to Duanzhou. I'm afraid we won't be able to go together. Xiao Qie also lowered his eyes and said to him, as long as we are out of Kudu, we will be able to go together, even to the ends of the earth. Shun Zichuan met Xiao Qie's gaze and said, the wolf pup should be in Libei. Otherwise, it'd be a pity for it to become flabby due to a long period of inactivity. Xiao Qie's eyes were calm and serene as he said, Libei has my eldest brother, and the Libei armored cavalry has my father. Horse racing is the only thing that suits me. Shun Zichuan lifted Xiao Qie's chin and gazed at him. He said, natural talents are bound to have their own uses, it's just that the time has yet to come. Xian, all of Libei's hope lies in these two words. Xiao Qie laughed in a deep voice and suddenly rolled over to pin Shun Zichuan down. Pressing his forehead against Shun Zichuan's forehead, he said, do you want me or not? Shun Zichuan's waist was sore, and his back was aching. As he recovered his strength and eased up his muscles, he squeezed the back of Xiao Qie's neck and said in a husky voice, are you giving me or not? Xiao Qie lowered his head to kiss him and pulled up the blanket over them. After that rainy night, Kudu's weather took a turn for the hotter. The Grand Secretariat demanded Pan Xiangjie's dismissal from his position of the Minister of Works, while the Chief Surveillance Bureau submitted more than 10 memorials in a row to impeach Pan Xiangjie. Their daily contentions in the imperial court were so heated that it made Li Jianheng's ears ache. Originally, Wei Huaigu and the major league ministers from the other noble clans would stick together for mutual benefits, thus, they would not easily abandon anyone. For example, men like Fu Linier were eventually demoted with a reduced salary and not exiled out of the capital. After the fall of Hua Xiqian, Hai Liangyi took over the position of the Grand Secretary of the Grand Secretariat. Although he entrusted Xue Xiuzhua, who was from a noble clan, with heavy responsibilities, he had also successively promoted several low-grade officials from humble backgrounds. Of them, Kong Qiu was the most conspicuous, and both sides pit against one another, overtly and covertly. However, what happened this time was a matter of grave importance. If Pan Xiangjie was not impeached, then Wei Huaigu would have to be impeached. Someone had to take the blame for the clogged official ditches. There was no way to find a scapegoat at all. The way things were playing out, the Ministry of Revenue was obviously much more important than the Ministry of Works. To the noble clans, the one who did manual labor could be cast aside, but the one who managed money must be retained. It was not just Pan Xiangjie who had to be dismissed and prosecuted. Even his eldest son of lawful birth, who was the Vice Minister of the Ministry of Revenue, had to be suspended from his post to await impeachment. Li Jianheng no longer spoke up on the imperial court that easily. After adjourning the court, he called for Xiao Qie, and both men wandered around the garden for some spring appreciation. I heard that you braved the rain to head out of the capital some days back. Dressed in bright yellow regular wear, Li Jianheng picked some candied fruits from the table and shared half with Xiao Qie. For what purpose? The military drill grounds are close to Mount Foam. I get worried each time it rains. It has only been a few days since the public ditches incident, so I rushed over that night to take a look. Xiao Qie smiled and replied, as if he did not notice that Li Jianheng had sent someone to keep an eye on him. Your Majesty knows of that military drill grounds too. It cost the Imperial Army a lot of money. If it were to get damaged from the rain, those 20,000 men of mine would have to share and put up with the 8 great training divisions. If you bring the Imperial Army to the 8 great training divisions' military grounds, the Ministry of Revenue will promptly allocate the funds to you tomorrow. Li Jianheng tossed the candied fruit into his mouth and said, I've seen enough these days to understand that they are guarding against you. They are only too glad to be as far away from you as possible. Xiao Qie said self-mockingly, "We are all attending to official duties. Where did they get that many ideas from?" Li Jianheng recalled the last time Xiao Qie was besieged and attacked on all sides by these people on the imperial court and promptly said, "They are full of evil tricks, and they are crafty to boot. Each one of them is such an eloquent speaker when it comes to handling matters, but in truth, they are all for the specific purpose of setting others up. They even dare to cajole me. What's more, we have to punish this Pan Xiangjie this time. He did not do his job properly and almost caused me to die. And guess what? Last night, Commandery Princess Jiaoyu entered the palace to keep the Empress Dowager company. The Empress Dowager knew better and said she would not interfere in state affairs. Only then did she manage to send her away. Tell me, how would a lady who's about to get married know about the insides and outs of these matters? Isn't it all because she was forced to buy the Marquis of Helion? After all, both of their families are in-laws." Xiao Qie followed Li Jianheng down the stairs and walked beneath those newly sprouted branches. He said, "Has your Majesty made up your mind to punish Pan Xiangjie severely?" Li Jianheng said, "Of course. We mustn't let him off easily." There was a picture of the disaster victims from the low-lying area sandwiched inside the memorial center you submitted. They are really too pitiful. I'm the emperor who lives in the imperial palace. Just like what the Secretariat Elder said, there are many matters I can only find out through word of mouth. Pan Xiangjie's negligence and tardiness in clearing up the clogged ditches caused so much harm to the others. I definitely have to punish him. The Secretariat Elder has the same intent too. Having tasted the sweetness from dishing out rewards and having been praised by the imperial censors, he now wanted to single out Pan Xiangjie to make an example out of him. I happen to disagree with the Secretariat Elder. Xiao Qie said out of the blue. Pan Xiangjie deserves to be punished. But this man mustn't be too easily removed from office. Li Jianheng turned his head back and said with a frown, "If we don't deal with him after he makes such a blunder, then are you going to keep him around for him to make another one?" Xiao Qie cast a glance at the clear sky overhead and remembered what Shen Zichuan had said. He suddenly laughed and said to Li Jianheng, "Of course your Majesty has to deal with him. But if you dismiss him from his post, it'll be tantamount to cutting off his career path. Pan Xiangjie is currently advanced in age, and he has also made some contributions in his position of the Minister of the Ministry of Works. Your Majesty, the blockage of the public ditches this time caused a surge in slop, which has indeed flooded and damaged the streets. Yet the embankments of Kaling River remained solid and secured like a wall of iron. In previous years, when the localities were flooded, there were very few dams and embankments that could hold up. Clearly, Pan Xiangjie has put some thoughts into this and has not cut corners. But his negligence and oversight of the public ditches is a fact, too. There's no reason to let him off easy just because of Kaling River. Your Majesty," Xiao Qie said, "the court assembly this morning discussed the allocation of funds for the spring plough. The Ministry of Revenue has been wrestling with the localities over this, and this matter has been stuck at an impasse for half a month. If we wait any further, we will miss the time. What has this got to do with not dismissing Pan Xiangjie?" Li Jianheng was not too pleased. Even if we retain him, the Ministry of Revenue will not allocate the fund. Wei Huaigu's subordinates are all very articulate. Even the Secretariat Elder can't be bothered to waste his breath on them. Only the imperial censors from the Chief Surveillance Bureau can tie with them when it comes to rebuking and condemning others. The Ministry of Revenue? The subordinates who are currently capable of attending official duties are all Wei Huaigu's protégés, so naturally, they will act according to Wei Huaigu's will. But Pan Xiangjie's son, Pan Lin, also happens to hold the post of Vice Minister of the Ministry of Revenue. If your Majesty can simply go through the motions in dealing with Pan Xiangjie this time, then their Pan clan, graced with imperial favor, will surely remember your Majesty's kindness. By then, his son would be just like your Majesty's son. If your Majesty has to deal with the Ministry of Revenue in the future, you'll have your own man in the Ministry of Revenue who can speak up on your behalf. Furthermore, once Pan Xiangjie is dismissed and prosecuted, the Ministry of Works will have to nominate someone else to take up the ministerial post. The new person may not necessarily be more loyal than Pan Xiangjie. Xiao Qie paused here and let Li Jianheng think for himself. Li Jianheng took a few steps and said hesitantly, but if he's not dismissed, there still has to be a punishment that can convince the masses. Pan and Fei are related through marriage, while Fei and she are close to each other. What they don't lack the most is money. Your Majesty can fine Pan Xiangjie and get him to cover all the expenses incurred during the dredging of the public ditches, then hand him the punishment of flogging. Flogging? Li Jianheng said in astonishment. He's so old, won't he be beaten to death? How is he going to mend his ways and be grateful if you don't let him have a taste of death? Xiao Qie smiled. Let the imperial censors rebuke him to their satisfaction. By the time your Majesty summons him for an audience again, he will be deeply grateful even if your Majesty tells him to bark like a dog in public, let alone cover the expenses. Delighted, Li Jianheng circled back and said to Xiao Qie, as usual, you're the resourceful one. Wei Huaigu is also the one who ran the audit of the expenditure this time. I fear he has, out of impure intentions, doctored the accounts. So it's still better for your Majesty to go over this case again and act with prudence. As expected, Li Jianheng looked to be put in a spot as he said, this is a job for the Ministry of Revenue. Where would I have the man? The other ministries can't interfere in this matter either. Then find one of those in the Ministry of Revenue to do it. The official at the top can't give a clear explanation, but the petty officials at the bottom are all honest men who actually carry out tasks for your Majesty. Xiao Qie brushed aside a branch and seemed to think about it before he continued, I met a competent official at Jiao Zui Temple this incident. He was the one who kept records of the accounts for the medicinal herbs which the Imperial Army had submitted earlier. Even the Secretariat Elder was full of praise for him. Your Majesty, how about letting him try? Overjoyed, Li Jianheng said, if even the Secretariat Elder has praised him, then we can't go wrong with him. Xiao Qie said in a steady voice, this man's name is Liang Cuishan. Shi Hongxian was taken into custody in the prison. He originally thought that with Li Jianheng to protect him and Xue Xiuzhue to use his power to help him, he would be quickly released. Who would have known that he would be locked up for so many days? No one delivered messages to keep him updated either, thus, he guessed that something must have gone wrong somewhere in between. When Shen Zichuan arrived at the prison, he had his waist token with him. He was someone who had a drink with Kong Qiu before, and he was a newly appointed official who rose to prominence the fastest. So Qiao Tianya only had to use a few catty of wine to talk the warden around. When Shi Hongxian saw Shen Zichuan, he hurriedly got up and asked through the bars, how is it? Why has there been no news? Has Pan Xiangjie been punished? If so, then it's time for me to be released. Although Shen Zichuan had his waist token hung, he was not wearing his official robe. He was dressed in a dark blue everyday wear with his collars tightly secured. His facial features were enveloped by the dim light when he entered, and the contrast of his clothes against the color of his skin made him look extremely white, with a hint of frostiness. You're still waiting for Pan Xiangjie to be prosecuted? Shen Zichuan said, there's been nothing about Pan Xiangjie these days. He's in charge of the Ministry of Works. How will they justify it if they don't punish him after there's such a big problem with the public ditches? Even His Majesty won't be able to justify it. Shi Hongxian clenched and tightened his fists. What went wrong in between? To shirk responsibility and shift the blame, Wei Huaigu relentlessly latched on to Pan Xiangjie. But as you know too, things can backfire when it reaches its limits. Even a jade rabbit can bite humans when it's forced into a corner, let alone Pan Xiangjie. To mitigate their crime, the Pan clan wants to cover the expenses this time. The porridge shack over at Jiao Zui Temple has yet to be dismantled, and the womenfolk of the Pan clan has already gone over to give out porridge to the disaster victims. They put on a meticulous show and did a careful job of keeping up appearance while assuming the stance of eating humble pie, as if they were submitting themselves to physical and verbal abuses from the others. Like they say, not for the sake of the monk but for that of the Buddha. So even the Secretariat Elder would have to take this into consideration and reconsider his punishment. Without a smile on his face, Shen Zichuan said, there's no way the Ministry of Revenue's delays of the accounts can be covered up. For everyone's good, Wei Huaigu should also admit his mistakes and endure a scolding. Yet, he is simply too oblivious and doesn't know when to advance and retreat. Second young master, Since Pan Xiangjie isn't dismissed and Wei Huaigu isn't punished, then they can only single you out this time and put you on the chopping board. After a moment of silence, Shi Hongxian said, Wei Huaigu is too money-minded. The reason he's suppressing this matter and refusing to relent is because he's afraid that the Ministry of Revenue's disparity cannot be covered up after he admits his mistakes, and Hai Liangyi would then have him in his grasp. Going by his temperament, if he can't kick out Pan Xiangjie to take the blame for him, then he will force me to fish out the money. No matter what, he won't let himself suffer. Fuck it, that wily old fox. When they were all bashing Xiao Qie together, they all wanted to ride on the 8 Great Training Division's coattails and have a share in the benefits reaped from the 8 Great Training Divisions. But now, Xiao Qie had not even been knocked out, and they were fighting among themselves. Shi Hongxian felt indignant. He had previously spent quite a sum of money on the matter concerning Shi Jiyuan. The good thing was that their family's salt mines were not confiscated and sealed off, so they were still raking in money. In any case, the imperial court had no idea about the Shi clan's private accounts. But it was different when Wei Huaigu wanted money. The 8 great clans knew best what the 8 great clans were like. The Shi clan sold salt and headed out to sea, and they even kept and maintained a large batch of ships at Yongquan Harbor. These were stuff the 8 great clans knew all too well. Spending money to ward off calamities. Shun Zichuan said gravely and earnestly, with yourself behind bars now, you have to choose a man you can trust to handle this matter for you on the outside. You are transferring money within private accounts. If the Wei clan wants some 10,000 taels, then just the transportation alone would be a big problem. There has to be someone who can organize it all for you. Furthermore, this matter is of utmost urgency, so have it done as quickly as possible. Look for Yanqing, Shi Hongxian blurted out. Having done so, he hesitated again. Xue Xiuzhua knew the ins and outs of the Shi clan, and it was hard to say if he might get some other ideas during the process. The Shi clan's accumulated mountain of gold and silver was something the previous few generations risked their lives to hoard, and they had countless successions of connected shops and businesses in Jueshi and Hezhou. Shi Hongxian could afford the money, but there was no one he could really entrust it with. With Shi Jiyuan dead, the few Shi clan concubines were really going at it with their abacuses. Perhaps even before he, Shi Hongxian, died in prison, he would end up dying by his own family members' hands. Shi Hongxian suddenly said, Lanju, you've been promoted to vice commander, and you also manage the imperial prison. You have the special rights to enter and exit Kudu to handle cases. It's too inconvenient for Yanqing, with him currently being in the Court of Judicial Review and all. I'm afraid he will be too conspicuous and end up being investigated by the others. How about you handle this matter instead? Shun Zichuan was rather surprised and said, I've neither managed accounts nor dealt with Wei Huaigu before, and I'm not familiar with your businesses on the outside too. So how would I be able to handle this well? Unfamiliarity was exactly what he wanted. Shi Hongxian said, there are managers appointed by me over at the Sultans. They are quick and efficient, so you don't need to worry about the money. It's just that transportation would prove to be particularly troublesome if the sum is too large. Tens of thousands of money worth would pile up into mountains when loaded onto the carts. You can't go the water route. All my family's routes are sea-based. Head inward to the north, and the Hua clan of Dicheng has the final say, while the Yang clan of Hezhou calls the shots in the south. So you can only take the overland route, which would require you to traverse the 13 cities of Jueshi, motherfucker. I don't believe this much money can't bury that Wei Huaigu to death alive. In any case, you don't need to fear anything else while passing through Jueshi, but you must be on guard against Jiang Qingshan. This man is a tough one. If he catches us red-handed, I'll be skinned. Shun Zichuan was in no hurry to agree. He said, this is an important issue. You should have a word with Xue Xiuzhua and let him know. No. Shi Hongxian considered it carefully. Yanqing is not a person who can handle this kind of matter. It'd work to the contrary if he were to intervene again. You only need to tell him to continue to think of a way to plead for mercy on my behalf on the imperial court. His Majesty's momentary hesitation is no big deal, but when I get out this time, Wei Huaigu will be the first one I'll kill. After he said that, he smiled at Shun Zichuan. There's no need for you to panic. I know you have never conducted a business transaction before. I left a bookkeeper in my Kudu residence. His name is Shidan, an old hand in my employ. Let him accompany you. I'll naturally have my own plans once I see him. Shi Hongxian was quick thinking. He did not dare to trust Shen Zichuan just yet. He remembered how Ji Lei had been played to death, so he held back and insisted on seeing his own man before he would take out his money. The Shi clan's keys were in a place only he knew of. Without the key, all the Shi clan's money vaults could not be opened. Give it a few days. Shen Zichuan said softly, I'll bring him to see you. Chapter 77, Dispute. Chapter 77, Dispute. Pan Xiangjie was suspended from his post as he awaited impeachment. Having also received a flogging, he sighed and moaned as he lay on his stomach back at home to nurse his injuries. His son, Pan Lin, was also implicated and had to endure the rebukes of the imperial censors every day during court sessions. A few days later, he was also suspended from his post to be detained and confined at home. Xiao Qie, having received a raise in rank, organized a banquet and specifically invited the Marquis of Helion. The Marquis of Helion was too embarrassed to appear before Xiao Qie because of the matchmaking attempt for Commandery Princess Jiaoyu the last time. He was also worried that this tyrant would be so proud of his success that he would humiliate him and make things hard for him before the others. So, after thinking it through, he got his son to attend the banquet on his behalf. Marquis Jr. was called Fei Shi. He was also a well-known figure on Donglong Street. He had once gone drinking with Xiao Qie in the past, but none of them lesser tyrants were as domineering as mega-tyrant Xiao Qie. What's more, he feared the Xiao clan, so he no longer went out for entertainment with Xiao Qie and would make a big detour whenever he saw Xiao Qie and Li Jianheng. Now that he had to attend Xiao Qie's banquet, he first wilted by half, then changed direction and headed to the Pan's residence to ask Pan Lin to go together with him. Go with me. We'll treat it as relieving our boredom. Fei Shi held up his robe and urged him on. The banquet this time is on Kaling River. There'll be many people there. Pan Lin's son was just a month old. He teased the baby for a moment before saying, Not going. I've been feeling vexed these few days. What fun is there in playing with a baby? Fei Shi squeezed in to intercept the nanny and said, I can't skip it this time. My father has specifically made his instructions clear. Go have some fun and make friends with him. I heard that he is friends with the left censor-in-chief of the Chief Surveillance Bureau, Center Yu. If he steps forth and intercedes for you, then you wouldn't have to endure as many rebukes. Seriously. Pan Lin tossed aside the handkerchief. Center Shuani's the one who's the most brutal in reprimanding me. Xiao II only advanced in rank this time owing to his friendship with His Majesty. Just how much can he convince Center Yu? I'm not going. I don't want to embarrass myself. Look at you. How are you this inflexible? Fei Shi was truly racking his brains to coax him out of the door. He has a prior friendship with His Majesty. If he can put in a few good words for the Pan clan before His Majesty, would you still need to be aggrieved to such an extent? Come on, let's go. I had a drink with him before. I'll introduce you. Unable to dissuade Fei Shi, Pan Lin was dragged out of the house and onto the horse carriage, which headed right for Kaling River. With Xiao Qie hosting a banquet this night, all the gala-painted pleasure boats on Kaling River were full. He was now famous, and all the brothels and taverns along the riverbanks benefited from association, having gotten a piece of the action. Money was being splashed around on the outside like water. He did not even have to open his mouth. Flocking all around him were people trying every means to give him money. But there's no such thing as a free lunch in the world. If he accepted their money, he would have to do them favors. If he did not do it today, then there would be plenty of pretexts for them to get him to do it in the future. Xiao Qie knew this all too well, so he did not accept a single coin. This was such a grand occasion, and he paid for it all out of his own pocket. Chen Yang flicked away noisily at the abacus in the back behind the scene. The more he computed, the slower he became. Eventually, he simply tossed away the abacus and said to Ding Dao and Ji Yujin, The palace has rewarded us with so many fields and mansions. Let's sort them out and find an auspicious day to sell them all. Xiao Qie just happened to come out after changing his robe. He cut an imposing sight, all decked in a gold crown, brocade robe, and black clouds boots. On hearing Chen Yang, his countenance changed. He felt his way to his belt and said, "I'm that poor. We have too many expenses at the start of spring. The villages on the outside are self-sufficient enough to bring in some money. But many residences in Kudu are bestowed upon us by the palace. We can't rent them out, and we still have to arrange for someone to clean them daily. Our Prince Residence and Plum Blossom Residence are permanent residences, and there are at least 300 people or so who serve in both. The monthly salaries, monetary rewards, and, Xiao Qie said, and Ding Dao's candy allowance. You have to eat an entire frontier reconnaissance squad's worth of rations each year, right? We've spoiled you too much." Grabbing his little notebook, Ding Dao did not dare to make noise and merely mumbled, "The princess consort gave special permission for this when I was back at home. You've grown up." Xiao Qie said callously, "You don't need to eat candies anymore. They are bad for your teeth. I'll temporarily hold off on the calculation of the expenses tonight." Chen Yang held on to the table, feeling a little dizzy. He said, "I'll do it tomorrow morning. When it comes to dealing with matters," Ji Yujin said succinctly, "a man's got to be liberal with his money, do a proper audit of the accounts for those residences on the outside. I hardly go there even in a few hundred years, and Dage is too busy to manage them on his end too. When those subordinates go free and unchecked for too long, they would even dare to hoodwink others." Xiao Qie strode a long step out, then retreated back and said, "Calculate it now. It won't be more than a few thousand taels. There's someone managing this account." Ji Yujin watched him step out of the door and asked, "Who? Who in our residence can manage how our second young master spends his money?" Chen Yang carried the abacus back and flicked through it for a moment before giving an equivocally worded reply. Ding Dao rubbed his boots against each other and stretched out his head to whisper, "I know who it is." Not many officials were invited to this banquet. Court officials of 4th grade and above were all subjected to censure from the Chief Surveillance Bureau had they gathered for private feasts. Xiao Qie was also the viceroy of the Imperial Army, so he could not invite any of the few important military officials who worked with him on the patrols. The feast center Yu held the last time was also a private feast. He first presented a memo to the Grand Secretariat, and it was only when Hai Liangyi gave his nod that he invited the guests. This was how it ought to be. Kong Qiu, having gotten inebriated that feast, ended up getting censured and had to sit through a lecture from Hai Liangyi. The censors of the Chief Surveillance Bureau were the imperial censors, just as described. They could rebuke the emperor at the top and denounce the various officials at the bottom. Even Hai Liangyi himself would receive a censure if he were slightly negligent. For example, during the public ditches incident this time, Hai Liangyi just so happened to hold the posts of the Grand Secretariat's Deputy Grand Secretary and Grand Secretary in successive order, so he would have to bear the blame had a problem cropped up. In the beginning, when Li Jianheng had just ascended to the throne, he found the dragon throne in Mingli Hall so hard that his buttocks ached if he sat on it for too long. Thus, he griped about it to those in close attendance. Not a few days later, he received a roundabout rebuke from the imperial censors. To this date, he never dared to bring up the matter of padding it with a thick cushion. Xiao Qie could not invite the authorities in power, but he could invite the nobles, or more specifically, the distinguished nobles. As long as it was a person of a hereditary noble rank, he invited them all. Most of these rich young masters with noble titles but no real power had someone in their family to back them, so they could have fun all they want with a peace of mind. One example was Fei Shi. His father was still alive and in good health, and his elder sister was about to marry a man from the Han clan, so he did not have to worry about his daily essentials like meals and clothing. He was not a good student either, barely learning anything. All he did the whole day was to loaf around. The moment Fei Shi stepped off the sedan, he dragged Pan Lin over to meet Xiao Qie. "Your lordship, congratulations." Xie Qie laughed and said, "I'm glad your little lordship is willing to honor me with your presence today. Please drink all the wine you want tonight." Seeing how approachable he was, Fei Shi could not help but relax. He said, "Your lordship is generous. I shall not leave sober tonight." Xiao Qie looked at Pan Lin and said, "Vice Minister Pan, please drink to your heart's content too." Is His Excellency Pan getting better these days? Hearing his usual tone, Pan Lin, whose heart had been in his mouth, relaxed a little. He returned the greeting and said, "Thank you for your lordship's consideration. My father's health is fine. It's just that he feels ashamed in the face of His Majesty's graciousness and has been facing the wall to self-reflect on the errors of his ways these days." Xiao Qie seemed to sigh with emotion as he said, "His Excellency Pan is a veteran minister of 3 reigns. He acts with prudence and is conscientious in his handling of state affairs. It's truly a pity for him to meet with such an unexpected misfortune." Pan Lin had been suffering setbacks day after day. He had pleaded with a great number of people to intercede on their behalf and have their sentences reduced. Other than the Fei clan, who still had the heart to help them out of their difficulty, the others all came up with every kind of excuse to turn him away. He was born a di, a legitimate descendant or of a noble clan, and his career had been pretty much smooth sailing. It was only now he had a taste of the world and found out just how fickle and hypocritical Society 3 was. Thus, he was greatly surprised and touched by Xiao Qie's words. "My father," Pan Lin felt emotional, but knowing the etiquette, he forced a smile and said, "Forget it. I'm here tonight to congratulate and celebrate your lordship's great happiness, so let's not mention anything else. Your lordship, congratulations. I'm just blessed to have His Majesty shower kindness and favor upon me. All I did was to carry out the task of rolling and crawling around in the mud. I can't be compared to the Vice Minister and His Excellency Pan, who worry about the state all day long." Chen Yang. Xiao Qie turned aside. "Invite his little lordship and Vice Minister Pan onto the boat and serve them well." Chen Yang bowed and respectfully led them both inside. One side of the ship's interior was draped with hanging sheer fabric, and the sound of pipa flowed into the night. The seats were arranged according to levels of superiority. Chen Yang led them both to the seats of honor. Seated at this table were all descendants from the noble clans. Pan Lin saw a few acquaintances, but he did not greet them. Seeing the unfriendly atmosphere, Fei Shi hurriedly got up to mediate. He said, "Isn't this eldest young master Xue? What a truly rare sight." Xue Xiui was Xue Xiuzhua's elder brother of lawful birth. But this person had neither talents nor brains and relied solely on his birth to trample over Xue Xiuzhua for many years. For he was an ambitious man, and now, after seeing the Pan clan on the decline, he was starting to give Pan Lin the cold shoulder. Xue Xiuzhua drank his wine and merely said, "Mph. And how is the little lordship doing?" Fei Shi jabbed his fan and said, "Me? Not too bad. What has the eldest young master been doing lately? Come out for some fun." Looking haughty, Xue Xiui said, "I'm busy. Been studying some books that are the only copy extant from the previous reign." Fei Shi smiled and said, My. The eldest young master is a man of great talent. So why do you have time today?" All this while, Xue Xiui had his side to them, as unwilling as he was to look Pan Lin in the eye. He said, "I heard Yarrow Wenyu has returned to the capital. I thought I should be able to see him here tonight, so I came. There are some issues I need to talk to him about." Pan Lin had been tolerating him for a long time. Seeing this attitude of his, he promptly sneered and said, "Not necessarily so. The queue of people who want to pick Yuanzhua's brain stretches all the way to Hongyang Mountain in accordance with their learning and accomplishments. It's pointless even if the eldest young master hangs around here waiting, it's still far from your turn." What Xiao Xiui hated the most was the others making a dig at him for his lack of talents and shallow knowledge. He promptly set down the wine cup and said in a frosty voice, "Fine. I'm not worthy. But I still have a little self-awareness of my own limitations. I know my own worth. I know whether or not I'm deserving of sitting in this position." At his double-edged remark, Pan Lin abruptly rose to his feet. Xue Xiui had a mean mouth, and he sneered when he saw Pan Lin go red in the face. Instead of being enraged, he chose some scathing remarks to throw out. "Come on, Chengji, take a seat. Why? Are there nails on this chair? Everyone on this boat is looking at you. You are basking in glory tonight. Your Pan clan has indeed been impressive lately, even more so than the time you had a son." Pan Lin's first wife had previously died of illness, and there were a few times his concubines got pregnant only to suffer miscarriages. Seeing that he was already over 30 years of age and was still without a son, old Madame Pan went vegetarian and prayed to Buddha while also seeking all over for prescriptions. In order for him to beget a son, she stuffed batch after batch of women into his room, causing such a hoo-ha that everyone knew about it and mocked Pan Lin behind his back for having an unmentionable affliction. Rage overwhelmed Pan Lin. He trembled and pointed at Shui, so furious was he that he gasped for breath and sputtered, You, and what the hell do you think you are? You let the common son beneath you take charge and manage the household affairs. You're simply, as dumb as a boorish boar. Shui slapped the table and rose to retort, You shut up. You are a disgrace to the educated class. You know dogs hit. Pan Lin countered, You're even worse than a beast. Sandwiched in the middle, Fei Shi held on to his teacup as he was splattered with a faceful of spittle. He closed his eyes and yelled, What the heck? Eldest young master, Changji, stop quarreling. Why ruin a good banquet? Shui said, Don't put me in the same category as him. He's not worthy. He doesn't even deserve to carry my shoes. Pan Lin looked to his left and right, then picked up the teacup and smashed it. This entire table was thrown into chaos. Fei Shi could not stop them. Both of them showed utterly no regard for their dignity as they tangled and fought with one another. Shui stayed at home all year round. He was small-sized and thin, and he was not skilled at fistfights and kickboxing. Subsequently, he was shoved to the ground by Pan Lin and ended up banging his waist hard. He repeatedly wailed, Oh wow. To think you dare to hit me, you. Pan Lin had nothing left to smash, so he took off his shoe and swung it to swat it right at his face, saying, I'm teaching you a lesson on behalf of old Master Shui. The hell you think you are? Your foul mouth ought to be slapped. There was an uproar all around. Fei Shi dodged that shoe and said urgently, Stop fighting. Quick, stop it. Men. Xiao Qie lifted the curtain and entered, his expression growing grave. Chen Yang led the guards forth to stop them and pulled both men apart. Shui had been smacked until there were red marks on his face. He covered his face and stretched out his leg, wanting to kick Pan Lin. With his neck craned, he spat out hatefully, We aren't done yet. This is not over. Pan Lin was truly a sorry sight to behold. He had come to his senses now. He never expected to make a clown of himself in public. Avoiding all the eyes on him and enduring his misery, he said resolutely, Even if I, Pan Changji, were to starve to death in the future, I'll never sit at the same table as you, Shui. And even if our Pan clan of Dancheng were to die out, I'll never beg your Shui clan for help. With that, Pan Lin tossed the shoe to the floor. He raised his head, but did not look at anyone, and merely cupped his hands before his chest to Xiao Qie. I, Pan Changji, will compensate your lordship for spoiling your lordship's fun, and I, Pan Changji, will also pay you back double for all the things I've smashed tonight. Not only that, I, Pan Changji, will even book this entire Kaling River for your lordship to have fun. Your lordship, I shall take my leave. I'll come calling on you another day to offer my apologies. He kicked off his other shoe too. And just like that, he stepped over the mess on the ground in his clean socks and pushed Fei Shi aside to make his way out. Your Excellency, please wait. Xiao Qie said in an unhurried tone. Chen Yang, take the Vice Minister to have a change of clothes first. Fei Shi hurriedly said, Right, Changji, let's get your clothes changed first. When all was said and done, Pan Lin was, after all, a noble clan young master. What's more, he was an authorized official of the imperial court. He had to speak tough, but if he really had to walk on the streets in this state, it would have been better to kill him. So, with Chen Yang and Fei Shi urging him on, he relented and went with them. Eldest young master. Xiao Qie lifted a finger to beckon Jiyu Jin over. He motioned, After you, too. Chapter 78, Individual Servings. Chapter 78, Individual Servings. Pan Lin was in a depressed state of mind as he sat on the couch near the window after he had a change of clothes. Feeling guilty, Fei Shi sat before him and made to speak, only to have the words die on his lips. You don't have to say a word. Pan Lin looked out of the window at the old but brilliantly lit brothel courtyard. It's just my bad luck to come across a lowlife like him. Fei Shi said, You know he's a lowlife who has an extremely narrow mind. Then why get angry with someone like him? Changji, it's not worth it. Pan Lin let out a self-mocking laugh and said, has our Pan clan fallen into such a sorry state? I can give up my moral integrity had it been for the sake of a meal. But I'd rather die than to let him mock me like this. Seeing how sorrowful he looked, Fei Shi knew that the social snubbing these days had really hurt him. Although Fei Shi was a loafer, he was pretty much a person who took it easy. He comforted, as long as the green hills remain, one need not fear a lack of firewood to burn. Where there's life, there's hope. His Majesty has not even issued the edict yet. Changji, didn't his lordship say so? His Excellency Pan is a veteran minister of 3 reigns. He'd still carry some weight in his Majesty's heart. On the other side, Ji Yujin lifted the curtain, and Xiao Qie bent over to enter. Fei Shi and Pan Lin stood up together to pay their obeisances to him. Xiao Qie raised his hand and said, Gentlemen, there's no need to stand on ceremony. Your Excellency Pan, please take a seat. Pan Lin took his seat and said to Xiao Qie, not only have I ruined your lordship's fun tonight, but I've also held your lordship up from enjoying the wine. I deserve a beating. Xiao Qie did not really mind. As he sat, Ji Yujin served him tea. He took a few sips and said, I've long heard of your Excellency's talents, but I have never had the chance to strike up a conversation. It could be said to be fate and luck that brought us here tonight. On hearing this, Fei Shi smiled and threw Pan Lin a signal with his eyes. Pan Lin hurriedly bowed. Xiao Qie motioned for him to take a seat again and said, I was the one who carried out the task of dredging up the public ditches, so I know very well how it feels. The public ditches on Donglong Street were old to begin with, having been haphazardly dug before His Excellency Pan took up the post of Minister of Works. There are too many points in this matter that don't make sense. If you ask me, the blame for the rise in water level this time shouldn't be pinned on His Excellency Pan. A surge of warmth welled up in Pan Lin's heart. He said, a few years ago, my father specifically asked someone to draw up a blueprint. But the Zhongbo troops just happened to suffer a defeat back then, and the state treasury lacked money. The Ministry of Revenue refused to allocate the funds, so this matter was passed over. Who would have known, sigh. To think there's still such a thing. Xiao Qie covered the teacup with the tea lid. But Wei Huaigu didn't mention a word about this before the emperor. Aren't both your families on good terms with one another? Pan Lin said nothing, and Fei Shi hastened to say, Your lordship, why is that Wei Huaigu is going all out to curry favors? It's all for the sake of being a top-league official. He endured for all these years, finally becoming qualified enough and just in time for the inspection this year. He's waiting for the evaluation to be submitted so that he can be promoted to deputy secretary. This is so he can stand up to Secretariat Elder High as equals on the imperial court in the future. No one expected the public ditches to end up clogged at this juncture. Of course, he has to think of ways to disassociate himself from it. He's not the slightest bit willing to shoulder the responsibility for this at all. I didn't expect him to be such a person. Xiao Qie looked slightly surprised. Having seen how the Ministry of Revenue's accounts these years have been clear without any glaring errors, I initially thought that it should be Wei Huaigu's turn for a promotion this year. But who would have known that he would turn out to be such a vile person who seeks personal gains this shamelessly? What happened to His Excellency Pan is truly unfortunate. Hearing the hint of appreciation in his words, Fei Shi could not resist plucking up the courage to say, everyone has been pretty much close-mouthed about the information lately. Your lordship, Changji, and I had asked quite a number of people, and we still don't know what punishment His Majesty has conveyed to the Ministry of Justice. If His Excellency were to be sentenced, would be he assigned out of kudu? With his heart in his mouth, Pan Lin looked at Xiao Qie. Xiao Qie sat tight in the chair and twiddled with his thumb ring. Only when he had them on the edges of their seats that he said, it's hard to say. His Majesty seems to me to be hesitating too. Fei Shi promptly said, as long as the imperial edict has not been issued, there's still a chance to turn things around. Your lordship is truly an official in the Son of Heaven's inner ministerial circle now. I hope your lordship can put in a few good words to His Majesty regarding this issue. I won't put in a good word for His Excellency Pan. Seeing both men's expressions change, Xiao Qie continued unhurriedly, I'll only speak the truth. His Excellency is talented and has made contributions to the state. Even if he has made some minor mistakes, it does not merit execution or banishment. I'll speak to His Majesty again when I enter the palace tomorrow. If all goes well, the pardon should arrive at your residences within 4 days. Pan Lin was so delighted that his eyes reddened when he stood up. He did not dare to overstep his boundary and touch Xiao Qie, so he could only grasp his own sleeves and fall to his knees hard as though he was transplanting rice seedlings and said, Many thanks to your lordship for saving our life. Jiyu Jin, quick, help the vice minister up. Xiao Qie said with a smile, this is what I should do. There's no need for your excellency to take it to heart. When you return today, tell His Excellency Pan to rest well. There are plenty of state and governmental affairs where His Excellency is still needed in the future. Fei Shuo, who was frank and outspoken, said, if there is anything we can do for your lordship in the future, please just say the word. Chengji, let's go. We have to head back and tell His Excellency the good news. Pan Lin thanked him again and said to Xiao Qie with sincerity, please let me know if I can be of help to your lordship in the future. Libei is too far, I'm afraid I can't help you there. But as long as it's in Kudu, I, Pan Chengji, will definitely do my utmost as long as your lordship gives the word. Xiao Qie said, there's no need to act like a stranger. However, you mentioned earlier that His Excellency Pan had found someone to draw up a blueprint for the public ditches of Kudu. I also happen to be worrying about the repairs for the public ditches. So could I trouble you to ask His Excellency Pan if he could lend me the blueprint for a look? Pan Lin said, there's no need to ask. I'll send someone to deliver it right to your lordship's residence once I return home. Xiao Qie comforted him some more, then watched as Jiyu Jin sent them off the boat. He listened to the reed pipes music from the pleasure boat for a moment before turning back to say to Ding Dao, eat what you like. Tell the cook to go ahead and dish it up. Once you're done eating, prepare some sweet and spicy dishes, then get the cook to grill some fishes carefully and have it delivered to your young master Shen. Don't alert anyone else. With his notebook in his bag, Ding Dao ran off. Chen Yang came up from behind and said to Xiao Qie in a hushed tone, Master, Xue Shui isn't going to stay for long inside, he's still waiting to see Yarrow Wenyu. Are we going over? Yes. Of course, we are going over. Xiao Qie looked back with icy cold eyes. Xue Xiuzhua planted a time bomb for me in the Quancheng silk matter. I have to give him a big gift in return. Tell the attendants to serve a few more pots of excellent wine. This Xue Shui is of great use to us. The prison, which fell under the charge of Kong Qiu, was strictly monitored, so Shi Hongxian could not send out any information. It was as if he was cut off from the world. The more he waited, the more anxious he became. After waking up one night, he found himself detained in isolation, having been swapped over to a windowless room. Why is there a sudden change in place? Because Shi Hongxian was obese, he could not squat down as freely as he would like. All he could do was to bend over slightly and call out through the gap to the warden who was delivering his food, Bro, sir, at least tell me something. That warden paid no attention to his words and opened the flap to push the rancid rice and leftover soup in. Then he picked up the tray and left. Hey, buddy, please hold it. Shi Hongxian raised his voice. I still have some silver in my pocket. Looking at how hard you've been working these few days, why not take it to buy some wine? Consider it my show of respect one to you. The warden turned back and spat a mouthful of saliva at him. Snubbed, Shi Hongxian sat on the straw mat in a daze without even taking his meal. He could not even sleep well these few days he had been waiting. He thought it over from different angles, but he did not where it had all gone wrong. The more time lapsed, the more uncertain he felt. This taste of being subjected to the whims of another was simply too hard to take. This room was damp, with no ducts for ventilation and no windows to let in light. Shi Hongxian would usually find it tough to sleep even on bamboo mats, and now, it was even more of a torture for him. Eczema had broken out on his back again, and he could not reach it even if he wanted to scratch. Later, Shi Hongxian heard a movement at the entrance. The door creaked open, and Shen Zichuan strode in. Behind him, Qiao Tianya, who was disguised as a stoic-faced youth, lit the lamp. Shi Hongxian struggled to move his legs and said, "What's going on?" Why am I locked up here? Is this Kong Chio's idea? I've never heard of there being such a room in prison. You are not a long-staying convict of the prison, so it's only right that you don't know about this place. Shun Zichuan pulled off his cloak and handed it to Qiao Tianya, then said to Shi Hongxian, "The food here is not fit for human consumption. I've specially prepared some dishes. Eat some, and we'll talk." With the cloak hanging over one of his hands, Qiao Tianya opened up the food box with his other hand and served up the delicacies they had bought earlier on the way here. Shi Hongxian sat on the straw mat and watched Qiao Tianya's movements in silence when he suddenly let out a laugh. His expression quickly cooled off, and he said, "This looks like a farewell dinner. This case doesn't merit a death sentence, so why scare yourself?" Shun Zichuan sat down on the bench that Qiao Tianya had dusted clean. When he noticed that Shi Hongxian had not moved his chopsticks, he got Qiao Tianya to take out another pair of chopsticks. Then, he picked a few dishes to eat before sampling a mouthful of wine. It was only then Shi Hongxian moved his chopsticks. Shun Zichuan set down the chopsticks and looked at him. He said with a smile, "We are brothers. Do you have to be so tightly guarded against me?" Shi Hongxian picked out the steamed twisted roll and gobbled them down. It was only after his hunger subsided that he said, "Times are special. If you were in my shoe, won't you act the same way? How did that matter go? Have you seen Shi Dan?" Shun Zichuan finished up the wine in his cup and nodded to Qiao Tianya. Qiao Tianya opened the door and led the man in. "Second young master." Shi Dan pounced in. When he saw Shi Hongxian, he lowered his head and wept, "You have suffered." Steadying his hand, Shi Hongxian drank up the last drop of wine and said, "Get up. Don't make a fool of yourself. It's not the time for me to meet my maker yet." Wiping his face, Shi Dan said, "During these few days when the second young master was not at home, I've already informed the shopkeepers of the various areas to manage their accounts carefully. I wouldn't dare to let them mess up. But you're the pillar of the clan. We still need you to take charge of the affairs personally." Shi Hongxian ate his dishes in silence. After a long while, he said, "Tell me the situation out there." Shi Dan replied, "His Majesty wants to pursue responsibility for the matter, and both the Ministry of Revenue and the Ministry of Works do not want to shoulder the blame. At present, Pan Xiangjie has already been suspended, and he has already received a flogging. Seeing as the situation did not bode well, I went to plead with His Excellency Shui, but he was too busy with his official duties that I did not manage to get to see him at all." "Yanqing did not see you?" Shi Hongxian suddenly threw his chopsticks away and looked at Shi Dan with slightly narrowed eyes. "Are you telling the truth?" On seeing his disbelief, Shi Dan hurriedly said, "Second young master, how can this be falsified? All you have to do is to ask when you are released to find out the truth, isn't it? How do I dare to hoodwink you when it comes to such matters? Doesn't this coincide with His Majesty's issuance of general amnesty? The Court of Judicial Review is going to coordinate with the Ministry of Justice to leaf through all the past old cases. His Excellency Shui has to go through the files with Kong Chio and the others. I don't dare to block his sedan chair either, and that's why I never got a chance to meet him." It was only when Shi Dan explained it in this way that Shi Hongxian more or less believed him. He said, "What rotten luck to be framed at this kind of timing. Lanju, exactly who instigated His Majesty to leave the palace? Is there still no update from the palace regarding this matter? There are only so many people around His Majesty, so just throw out a guess." Shun Zichuan said. "But it's obvious His Majesty is reluctant to investigate. He's clearly of the mind to protect the other party. Mu Yu is the only one who can make His Majesty protect her to such an extent." Shi Hongxian clenched his fists. "Bitch is ruthless. There must be a reason for her to do so. You have to be careful. She'd better not be pregnant with an imperial heir and eyeing the throne to rule behind the screen, too, since she is in Shui Xiujua's camp. I doubt she will conceive that easily." Once again, Shun Zichuan brought up the past. "It was also Shui Xiujua's idea for you to transfer to the Bureau of Evaluations. If it's indeed the case that Mu Yu wanted to harm you, I can no longer get what Shui Xiujua is thinking." On the day Shi Hongxian abducted Qi Hualian, Shun Zichuan had also mentioned that it was Shui Xiujua's idea for him to enter the Bureau of Evaluations. Now that he had brought it up again half a month later, The implication of his words had taken on a different undertone. Shi Hongxian pondered it over for a while, then said, "Let's leave these matters aside for the time being. Lanju, the priority is to get me out of here." "What did Wei Huaigu say? How much does he want?" "I'll give him." Shun Zichuan extended 4 fingers. Shi Hongxian said, 400,000. Shun Zichuan did not move. Shi Hongxian propped himself up on the table and stood up. He exclaimed, 4 million? The dishes and bowls on the table collided. Shi Hongxuan's expression under the lamp gradually grew savage. He flung the wine cup without warning and seethed, "Good one there, Wei Huaigu. Well played, the Wei clan." "So, for million," he began to laugh grimly. "This is the total military expenditure of Dazhou. It's almost as much as the cost of rebuilding Zhongbua. So much money. Fuck. How's he going to get it? That's truly a real mountain of silver. It would take half a year just to transport it separately from the west. And it'll also cost money to bribe the various passes and checkpoints during this period of time when the money is being escorted across territories. Even if the money makes its way to Kudu, where is he going to store it? There's simply no way to hide this much money. What he is doing now is ripping you off by making such an exorbitant demand, so why would he care that much? The imperial bodyguards have just gotten the news that the Wei clan indeed has their eyes on Zhongbua. Think about it. Wei Huaigu currently has the Ministry of Revenue in his grasp. If he manages to take down the 6 prefectures of Zhongbua, then this sum of money would be really used on military expenses. By the time the Wei clan has their own troops, and, with the Empress Dowager, then the Shi clan would be at their mercy. Shi Hongxian suddenly turned his head to look at Shun Zichuan. "When you advised me to join forces with them back then, have you ever thought that this would happen today? Lanju. These people are all wolves and tigers, they are all insatiably greedy. The moment they have us in their hands, then you and I will never be able to get back on our feet again in this lifetime. Back then, when I advised you to join forces with them and kick out the Yarrow clan, you hesitated. The Yarrow clan was initially a good target for you to punish as a warning to others. You missed the chance, so the situation today is only to be expected. Shi Hongxian, if you don't kick them, then they will think of ways to boot you out." As if lamenting, Shun Zichuan said, "This situation is ever so fast changing. It's no longer the same as it was decades ago when everyone could still talk reason to one another. The 8 great clans is such that one clan rises when another falls. It's wearing down from within. You should have long swallowed up the others and declare yourself king." Shi Hongxuan's breathing quickened slightly. At this very moment, he regretted his inaction. His palms were drenched in sweat as he faced the flickering candlelight and said, "Lanju, when I get out this time, I'll heed your advice in all future plans. Since it has already come to this now, we have to think of a way first to get those 4 million. 4 million is still too much." Shun Zichuan said. "There's simply no way for that much money passing through Jueshi to escape Jiang Qingshan's eyes. Wait a little longer. I'm going to negotiate with Wei Huaigu." At this point, there was no other choice but to wait. Holding himself back, Shi Hongxian said, "It'd be best to hurry. The situation in the imperial court changes too fast. What's more, His Majesty is indecisive and doesn't have a mind on his own. If Xiao II or Mu Yu were to coax and win him over, then it'll really be too late." It was inadvisable for Shun Zichuan to stay too long. As he put on his cloak, he asked, as if offhandedly, "Oh, right. You are in prison, then what about Qi Hualien? He's important too, so don't let anyone see him." Shi Hongxian was about to say something, but he changed his mind in a split second. He softened his voice as he said to Shun Zichuan, "Don't you worry. Qi Hualien will not starve to death. I've found someone to watch over him. It's just that the place is well concealed. I'll return him to you when I get out of here." It was under this dim light that Shun Zichuan partially turned his head back with a hint of a smile in the uplifted corners of his eyes. As he secured his cloak, he softly said, "Sure." A cold draft of wind slipped in through the crack between the door, causing the hairs on Shi Hongxian to stand on ends. He rubbed his arms, wanting to say a few words more to reassure him, but Shun Zichuan had already stridden out of the door. Chapter 79, Clues. Chapter 79, Clues. A cacophony of human voices hung over Kaling River. Shwe Xiui sat cross-legged on the couch, cracking peanut shells and drinking wine. When Xiao Qie entered, he hurriedly brushed his robe clean and got off the couch to pay his obeisances to Xiao Qie. Xiao Qie sat directly opposite Shwe Xiui, and Chen Yang came over to pour wine. Shwe Xiui placed his fingers at the sides of his legs and subconsciously rubbed them on his robe to wipe his hands. At the same time, he said, "That's enough, that's enough. Your lordship, too much of this wine is bad for your health." Holding the cup, Xiao Qie said to him with a smile, "The eldest young master is quite meticulous. You must be diligent in keeping yourself in good health back in your residence, right?" "Only a little." Shwe Xiui did not dare to take his seat without explicit permission. He was short and small-sized to begin with, and hunching over to Xiao Qie in a bow made him look even more humble and lowly. Xiao Qie cordially said, "Please sit. I'll still have the eldest young master's advice to seek." With his backside at the edge of the couch, Shwe Xiui said, "I wouldn't dare to be so presumptuous as to offer advice." Xiao Qie noted from Shwe Xiui's appearance that the latter was clearly poles apart from Shwe Xiuzhua. For Shwe Xiuzhua to have to submit to such an elder brother, it was only natural for him to be unable to take it lying down. "It has been a while since I last saw His Excellency Yanqing." Xiao Qie drank his wine. "I heard that he has been busy investigating cases with Minister Kong. It has been hard on him. It's only because the Secretariat Elder has promoted him that he's basking in glory now." Xiu Xiuyu had long disliked Shwe Xiuzhua. He had been making things difficult in all kinds of ways possible for this younger common-born brother of his, but a pity Shwe Xiuzhua had always been like a cotton that cushioned all his damages and made all his efforts come to naught. He's the eldest young master's younger brother of common birth. According to customs, the one leading the way to join the ranks of officials in the imperial court should be the eldest young master. So why is it the other way round in your household? Shwe Xiui accepted the wine, not daring to refuse it. He had already lost his sense of propriety after downing a few cups and was now feeling the earth spinning at his feet. At Xiao Qie's question, he gripped the cup and said with a snort, "Well, he has the capability, no? Your lordship doesn't know it, but he has always been one since young to ingratiate himself with men in power for personal gains. He's a shrewd and deep one." There was heavy snow in the year he was born. When the time came for him to be named with the generation name Wan Xiu, he was supposed to be named Gui, but a Daoist priest predicted that he would meet an extremely distinguished benefactor in his life, and calling him by this name would instead prove to be adverse. His birth mother, who was a resourceful woman, fawned upon our old master in all ways possible, pleading for him to be named with a Zhuo instead. As in, cultivation of virtues and outstanding capabilities too, with the courtesy name 3 Yanqing. "He sure has a charmed life." Shwe Xiui's eyes dimmed when he spoke to this point. Xiao Qie comforted him. "Eldest young master, why contend with him? You are the eldest lawful son of the Shwe clan. You are way more esteemed than him." For his words hit right at Shwe Xiui's sore point, making him feel stifled. Sure enough, Shwe Xiui set down his cup and let out a long sigh. "Your lordship." Shwe Xiui was already drunk, and subsequently, he grew bolder. "You are the second son of lawful birth of the Prince of Libei. There is no one of common birth to pose as a threat to you, so you are unaware of the specifics. People like us fear having a capable younger brother of common birth back at home. His of lowly birth, yet his a notch above me. Whether it's at home or out there, who doesn't praise him to the skies? What is this? How am I supposed to live with this? Look at the 8 great clans. Which of them has a descendant of common birth as the head of the clan? How is it that only our Shwe clan has produced a Shwe Xiuzhua? It was all because of his own selfish desires that he detested Shwe Xiuzhua this much. But then, it was also precisely all because of Shwe Xiuzhua that the Shwe clan was able to make a comeback and secure its position among the 8 great clans. Just the heirs born to the principal wives in the Shwe clan alone numbered in the hundreds, all of which took on the label of being a lawful son. Beneath them, there were also countless common sons born by the concubines. All the momentous family occasions such as marriages and funerals, monthly salaries and monetary rewards, expenses for living in separate residences, as well as taxes and costs for the country estates, came from the Shwe clan's coffers and assets. Initially, Old Master Shui planned to support Shui Xiui and let this eldest son of lawful birth of his take charge of the household as well as manage the family affairs. But the latter was either engrossed with cultivating the way of immortality or lavishing money on undeserving impostors and swindlers. It was just like what the Empress Dowager had said in the beginning. The descendants of the current Shui generation were all worthless good-for-nothings. Other than Shui Xiuzhua, who was of common birth, there was no one else worthy of notice. At present, Shui Xiuzhua was the Court of Judicial Review Assistant Minister. At the same time, he was also the head of the Shui clan. In these few years, he managed to put a stop to the downward decline of the Shui clan and secured its position among the noble clans. He had plenty of brothers at home who simply loafed around and contributed nothing, and he still had both paternal and maternal uncles up there who devised schemes all day to cheat the clan out of money. All of them lived off Shui Xiuzhua even as they spat at him, shamelessly seeking personal gains on the sly while cursing him for being of too lowly a birth. Xiao Qie was perfectly well aware of this. He had the same thinking as Shen Zichuan, and that was, if not for their uncertainty in where Shui Xiuzhua stood since he had all along been hiding behind the noble clans, then they, valuing talents, would have been willing to pull this person over to their side. The Quancheng silk incident was the key. It obscured Shen Zichuan's vision of Shui Xiuzhua, turning him into a person they must guard against, a man who was so astute and shrewd to the extent that he had already planted hundreds of thousands of threads of puppet strings as a precaution for future planning. Long before everything happened was no doubt someone who would not easily put himself at the disposal of another. When Xiao Qie, who was stroking his wine cup, thought to this point, he said, "As long as you are human, there will be times you will be down on your luck. There's no need for the eldest young master to be too anxious over this. He seems to me to be doing a pretty good job of attending to official duties at the Secretariat Elder and Minister Kong's side. And he typically doesn't go drinking or fool around with the other. He's a decent person who knows his place." Shui Xiui immediately got all worked up. His wine-induced hiccups persisted, and he covered his nose and mouth for a moment to compose himself before he impatiently said, "That's all just an act. Your lordship, you know of the twin flowers on Donglong Street, right? That's Ohua Pavilion and Shangyun Villa. A few years back, Shui Xiuzhua bought a batch of people from Shangyun Villa and hid them in the residence to groom." Xiao Qie suddenly smelled something fishy when he heard Shangyun Villa mentioned. His gaze sharpened as he repeated in a lowered voice, "He bought people from Shangyun Villa?" "He did." Xiao Xiui extended his fingers. "He bought over 10 boys and girls, all from Shangyun Villa." After a moment of silence, Xiao Qie rose and said, "Chen Yang, keep eldest young master company. I think it's about time for Yarrow Wenyu to arrive. I'll go welcome him." The moment Shui Xiui heard Yarrow Wenyu's name, he sat upright and repeatedly stated his agreement, not daring to pester or bother him further. As soon as Xiao Qie stepped out of the door, he shouted, "Ji Yu Jin." Ji Yu Jin dropped down from above, got down on one knee, and said, "Second young master." Xiao Qie questioned, "How did you not find out Shangyun sold over 10 people to the Shui clan when I told you to investigate Shangyun Villa earlier?" Stunned, Ji Yu Jin did not dare to raise his head and promptly said, "I beseech young master to punish me. In the previous assassination case, Shangyun switched sides and provided falsified evidence of Xiao Qie accepting bribes. This matter was fishy. Their investigations to this date threw up no clues as to why Shangyun suddenly threw in her lot with the noble clans. Shui Xiuzhua was no womanizer or lecher, so exactly what secret was there in his buying of so many people from Shangyun Villa and taking them back to his residence to hide without so much a word of it all this while? Shen Zichuan was right. Even if Shui Xiuzhua had nothing to do with it, he had already appeared in every single incident ever since the Nanlin Hunting Grounds episode, perhaps even before the Nanlin Hunting Grounds incident. Of course, you should be punished. You have drunk quite the volume of wine ever since you came to the capital. Have you drunk yourself so drunk that even those eagle eyes of yours now have gone blind? No doubt you ought to be heavily punished for your incompetence and dereliction of duty. Go on your own to ask Chen Yang for a whipping." Ji Yu Jin started sweating profusely. Xiao Qie handed Ji Yu Jin's this job because he appreciated Ji Yu Jin's meticulousness in his work, and Ji Yu Jin was also the most skilled in conducting searches. As a former scout in the Libe armored cavalry, He had never made such an oversight. Xiao Qiye was right. He had stayed in Kudu for so long that he even dared to take his assignments lightly. I give you 2 days to run another check. Get to the bottom of the number of people Shangyun sold to Shuexiuzhua, their names, places of origins and ages, and even who their parents and distant relatives are. Xiao Qiye strode past him and said in a frosty tone, make another oversight, and you need not remain in this position anymore. Jiyu Jin said nothing and kowtowed, then he rose to his feet and headed for Shangyun Villa. Chen Yang, having gotten freed up, came out and saw Xiao Qiye's displeased expression. Thus, he said, Master, Shuexiuzhua is taking a rest now. Get someone to send him back tomorrow morning. Xiao Qiye turned back to cast a glance inside. There is a set of rare books that are the only extant copies in the Plum Blossom residence. Give it to him when you send him away tomorrow morning. Chen Yang reminded him. Those are the Yarrow clan's collection of books. Should we inform young Master Yarrow? Yarrow Wenyu sold the Plum Blossom residence to me. That means he has already decided that he doesn't want them anymore. For most part of the year, he's out there traveling and living in foreign lands. He doesn't care for these. Xiao Qiye had drunk a large amount of wine this night, yet he did not seem to be drunk. He tossed aside the handkerchief he used to wipe his hands. Besides, even if he returned to the capital, he's so elusive that it's hard to get hold or even catch a glimpse of him. He will definitely not attend a banquet like this. This is not an easy man to invite. Had it not been for the fact that young Master Yarrow didn't join the ranks of officials in the imperial court, I'm afraid Shuexiuzhua would not even have the chance to shine today. Still looking displeased, Xiao Qiye said, the turbulence of politics cannot be equated with the engagement of academia. Yarrow Wenyu may not necessarily do better than Shuexiuzhua. These two are interesting. They are opposites in every way. When all is said and done, his secretariat elder high student. If Shuexiuzhua is a traveler of the secular world, then young Master Yarrow is an immortal who transcends the mundane world. Chen Yang pondered it over. But looking at Secretariat Elder Hai, he cherishes young Master Yarrow more. That's right. Hai Liangyi imparts his knowledge to Yarrow Wenyu without reservation. He did not hesitate to break his original beliefs and overlook the noble clan's prejudice to accept him as his student. This alone is enough to see how much he values him. Shuexiuzhua's political achievements all these years are decent, yet Hai Liangyi still would not give him the dignity of being real teacher and pupil. What's more, Hai Liangyi does not have the slightest intent all these years to force Yarrow Wenyu to serve as an official. Yuanzhua. It was out of fatherly love that Hai Liangyi bestowed this courtesy name on Yarrow Wenyu back then. The closeness of a teacher and pupil whose relationship has already reached that extent is already something no one else can compete with. Xiao Qiye said, Yarrow Wenyu is a legitimate noble young master of a noble clan. Going by their way of thinking, Yarrow Wenyu is even more legitimate than those so-called legitimate Di descendants of the Pan, Fei, and Shui clans. The Yarrow clan is honorable and distinguished. Even the ladies of the Hua clan would find it hard to marry into the Yarrow clan in the past. Mountains of gold and silvers are, to him, not that much of a rarity as a bowl of wild herbs. Chen Yang had not seen Yarrow Wenyu that many times. When he bought the residence, he only had a brief encounter with him once. He remembered the latter as a scholar with a Jiawen bag 5 on him, one who did not like to ride horses or sit in sedans, and instead kept a donkey. Is Ding Dao back? Xiao Qiye suddenly asked. Chen Yang said. He hasn't left yet. Let him play. Xiao Qiye strode into his own house and removed the brocade robe on him to replace with a set of ordinary clothes. At this point in the banquet, I should have already drunk with all those whom I ought to keep company. There's still some spare time before daybreak. I'll be back soon. Shun Zechuan stepped out of the alleyway, and Shidan followed after him from behind. Shidan did not dare to overtake Shun Zechuan and simply stood behind him as he waited for orders with his head lowered. Unexpectedly enough, Shun Zechuan was gentle. After turning around to look at him for some time, he said, You spoke well tonight. Shidan quickly bowed and replied, It is this lowly one's greatest aspiration to help your excellency with your frustrations and difficulties. But Shi Hongxian is suspicious by nature. It's not possible to trick him out of real money with only a few words. Shun Zichuan commented. Are you fully aware of his businesses across the various lands? Shidan said, yes, I am. His accounts, whether big or small, would always be sent to his residence in Kudu every month. The 68 shopkeepers under him are all sons of domestic slaves. The parents, wives, and children of these people are all in his grasp. They were raised specifically for the purpose of managing his accounts. There is no way to hide any big or small goings-on in the storefronts from his eyes. He knows the score. And that's why there has never been a problem in his business empire all these years. Shun Zichuan then replied, if Shi Hongxian wants to withdraw these 4 million, he has to brief you to take the money from the money vault and hand you the key to open the vault door. I only want to ask, how will this money be transferred? Shidan silently made some mental notes and said after a while, there is, in fact, a huge risk when traveling on land. When escorting the money carts, cargoes are needed as a front to conceal the silvers. This is 4 million we are talking about. Without a business with a long history to serve as the cover, then Jiang Qingshan, the provincial administration commissioner of Jueshi, would be able to see through it right away. Moreover, Your Excellency, if we travel by land, then we must first bypass the 13 cities of Jueshi, as well as Dicheng. These are all difficult checkpoints to pass. Most importantly, Shi Hongxian is right. There is no place to conceal this sum of money in Kudu at all. These were silver ingots and not paper bills. Even if one had vacant a quarter to keep them hidden, there was no knowing whether it would be able to accommodate all 4 millions of them. Then, there was also the headache of spending this money once he had the money in hand. Shun Zichuan pondered as he looked into the night, then said, this sum will not enter Kudu. Shidan did not dare to make a sound. Sure enough, Shun Zichuan continued after some time, the shipment is subjected to inspections by Jueshi whether it is transported by land or by sea. 4 million is too great of a sum. Even if we are thorough in our planning to keep a tight lid on this matter and hide the shipment from the prying eyes, those who carry out the orders won't necessarily do a good job of the same. It's also pointless if the money can't be spent when it comes in. And so, this money won't reach Kudu. Trying to figure out what Shun Zichuan was thinking, Shidan tentatively probed, what Your Excellency means, is to trick the money out of him, keep it there, and circulate it through trading? One half of it will be handed to you to do just that, Shun Zichuan said, I'll come up with something for the other half. Be prepared. The Shi clan's business is extensive, and they can't do without a manager. When Shi Hongxian falls, you'll be the next in the line. Shidan quickly answered in agreement. Without another word more, Shun Zichuan climbed into the horse carriage and parted with Shidan for the time being. He still had to return to the imperial prison to review the files of all cold cases within the last 2 decades to infer some clues from them. He did not even have the time to go home and sleep. The horse carriage reached the imperial prison. Ji Qingqing, who was on night patrol, had long since opened the gates to wait for Qiao Tianya to drive in. When Shun Zichuan stepped off the carriage, Ji Qingqing came closer and whispered, His Lordship the Marquis is here. Shun Zichuan unclasped his outer cloak and stepped onto the front porch. He nodded towards Ji Qingqing, who then took his leave. Shun Zichuan pulled off his cloak and hanged it on his arm as he pushed open the door. Xiao Qie, having drunk wine, could not rid himself of the scent of wine even after he had a change of clothes. He slumped on Shun Zichuan's chair, with an opened book covering his face. When he heard the sound, he lifted the book but did not move. Come sit here. Xiao Qie tossed the book onto the table. Shun Zichuan shut the door. He hung his outer cloak on the clothes rack and undid the clasps on his clothes in passing. Meeting Xiao Qie's gaze, he swung one of his legs over Xiao Qie's thighs, coming face to face with him before suddenly drawing even closer to him. Xiao Qie reached out to wrap his arms around Shun Zichuan's lower back, and their delicate lips met as they first kissed to their heart's content. Chapter 80, Betrothal Gift. Chapter 80, Betrothal Gift. This bout of sparring lasted a long time, pushing their satiety level to an even greater height until it became an insatiable desire for more after they had taken their first taste of the forbidden fruit. They were used to testing each other's limit in the dark. As their love grew increasingly deeper, a mere kiss was no longer able to fill their hunger. Desire, in its prime, laid bare at its rawest. Such a cloyingly sweet and clingy intimacy was a unique treat distinct to lovers, simply because it was a luxury to be in each other's company at all times. Since there were many eyes and ears inside the imperial prison, a kiss could only be considered a kind of tacit compensation between them. When it was time to end the kiss, Xiao Qie asked, "Where did you go?" As Shun Zichuan eased into his seated position, his thighs ground against the sides of Xiao Qie's legs. He took his time, slowing down his breathing. With a hint of veiled seduction in his half-lidded eyes, he replied, "Counting money." Xiao Qie squeezed him and said, "Did you get off on counting money?" Shun Zichuan let out a husky laugh. "Getting off from being squeezed by you." At Shun Zichuan's laugh, Xiao Qie felt restless. He grabbed Shun Zichuan's chin to hold it in place and said, "Keep going with this seduction of yours." Shun Zichuan's collarbone was peeking out from his undone collars, and the brutal bite marks from the last time had yet to fade. Paying them no mind, Shun Zichuan wetted his bitten lips and said, "I have to discuss something with you." Xiao Qie held him up and said, "What a coincidence. I have something to discuss with you too." Shun Zichuan was so scalded by Xiao Qie's gaze that his mouth felt dry and parched. He said, "The military supplies this year have to wait until April before they can be dispatched from Jueshi. I need to borrow and use the Northeast Provisions bridle path." Xiao Qie only had to think for a little to know what he was up to. The military supplies passing through the Northeast Provisions bridle path are personally escorted by the Libe armored cavalry themselves. There are no inspection checkpoints along the way. You can use it to transport the silvers, but it's all subjected to my elder brother's approval. If this money belongs to me, the hereditary prince naturally won't agree to it. But if this sum of money is yours, the hereditary prince will surely agree. Shun Zichuan raised his chin slightly. "Here is my betrothal gift. Keep it for me, second young master. Only this much as a betrothal gift." Xiao Qie laughed as he freed up one hand to place the meal box on the table. "A tough deal." Shun Zichuan sniffed and said, "There's grilled fish." With that, he promptly forgot about the betrothal gift and pulled out chopsticks inside the box. It was in this way that Xiao Qie watched as he ate. In a blink of an eye, the bowl of rice was half gone, and there were only bones left of the fish when it returned to the plate. Xiao Qie actually did not like eating fish. He had lost his mother when he was young, and his household was not one to spoil its children, unlike how the 8 great clans pampered their offspring. Although he had a nanny and maidservants to wait upon him, he had to feed himself once he had learned how to hold the chopsticks. He was headstrong, and there were plenty of toys he loved to play with, so he did not care to waste his time picking out the fish bones. After getting choked on it enough times, he hardly ate it anymore. Xiao Qie looked at him and said, "Does it smell good?" Apparently, it's from a chef from Hezhou, who is even harder to hire than the imperial chefs from the palace. Shun Zichuan picked out the fish bones and fed Xiao Qie the meat with his chopsticks. Xiao Qie tasted it and commented, "Passable." Having eaten his fill, Shun Zichuan set down his bowl and chopsticks and said, "What do you want to discuss with me?" Xiao Qie handed him a handkerchief and said, "The earlier investigation into Shang Yun missed one piece of information. A few years earlier, Xue Xiuzhua bought a batch of people from Shang Yun Villa and kept them in his residence. I'm afraid even Shi Hongxian doesn't know about this matter." As expected, there was a shift in Shun Zichuan's expression. He said, "He's not one to keep and raise prostitutes in private. This kind of thing is also almost unheard of in Ohua Pavilion. This action is too abnormal." "That's right. It's abnormal." Xiao Qie leaned back against the back of the chair. "I have a hunch that the reason Shang Yun made a false charge against me lies here. He bought them a few years back." Shun Zichuan gradually furrowed his brows. If it was truly to get Shang Yun under his control, then this move was planned much too early. Why would Shang Yun fall under his control because of this? Some pawns, if planted too early, would not necessarily be able to stand up to the test of time. I feel that he's not making such a move just to get a handle against Shang Yun. Xiao Qie sorted out his line of thought. Your plotting of the assassination is not something he would be able to predict in advance. So the subsequent post-developments would definitely be hard for him to guard against. Xiao Qie groped around these messy threads of clues, one at a time. His wolf-like intuition told him that this matter would not be that simple. Improvision. Shun Zichuan suddenly righted Xiao Qie's face and said, "You are right. The puppet string connected to Shang Yun was not specifically intended to be used for dealing with you. Shang Yun's act of perjury was simply an opportunity he seized for his own purpose. The fact that he could simply throw out Shang Yun to use shows that Shang Yun is of little significance to him. There is another reason he bought those people, and Shang Yun is merely a convenient pawn that incidentally came with this reason. What's more, she's a pawn he can't wait to discard. Then, the key to his purchase of those people is, Xiao Qie was on the same wavelength. Among the batch of people he bought." Shun Zichuan completed his sentence softly. Both men looked at each other, caught yet again in another puzzle of unknowns. Shang Yun Villa was a brothel. What person could there be in a brothel who would be of great importance to Xue Xiuzhua? He bought over 10 people to obscure the truth and throw everyone off scent so that no one can tell who exactly was his intended purchase. No doubt Shang Yun herself doesn't know the answer either. Xiao Qie said, "I have to get Xue Xiui to probe into this matter again. His status in the Xue residence would allow him free access to the residence. Xue Xiuzhou might be able to obstruct and deny entry to outsiders, but he definitely can't do that to Xue Xiui." This piece of information was indeed important, but Shun Zichuan could not figure it out at present. He had maneuvered Shi Hongxian into action this time also because he had apprehensions about Xue Xiuzhua, who similarly had Shi Hongxian in his grasp. Instead of becoming more distinct and decipherable with the passage of time, this person had, on the contrary, became increasingly obscure and unreadable. There's still time. Shun Zichuan seemed to be thinking aloud to himself. We will be thrown off kilter the moment we get overly anxious, and that could easily put us in a disadvantageous position. Since he has not made his move, then it means it's not time yet, and this is an opportunity we can exploit. At this time, we are the ones hiding in the dark, while he's out there in the open. We will definitely learn some crucial information if we follow the clues. Shi Hongxian has always been on friendly terms with Xue Xiuzhua all these years. Even if he's unaware of Xue Xiuzhua's purchases of those prostitutes, there will still be something he knows that others don't. I'll probe him again later. After saying so much, you still haven't let this second young master in on the details. Xiao Qie did not let him get off him. How much silver did you swindle from him? Shun Zichuan snapped out of his thoughts and pursed his lips slightly. He raised 4 fingers, just like he had done so before. Xiao Qie immediately grasped those fingertips tight without demur. Sweet. Worth it. Put it down as your betrothal gift, quick. Shun Zichuan said, you should act with a little more reserve instead of jumping at it. 4 million is too little still. Xiao Qie said, it's too generous. A starting price at 4 million? For someone who can make this much money as you do, this second young master will take whatever price you offer. Amused by him, Shun Zichuan said, I told him that Wei Huaigu wanted 4 million silvers. There was not the slightest bit of hesitation or reluctance on his part at all, which shows that 4 million is simply a drop in the ocean to the Shi clan. Seeing how happy he was tonight, Xiao Qie made no further mention of Xue Xiuzhua's matter. He jerked his legs to jolt him and said, only the Shi clan themselves know precisely how much money the Shi clan has. All the others can only see are the sultans and copper mines they operate. The extent of their enterprise isn't just limited to the whole empire, but also stretches as far as the foreign lands. The common rich young masters play by hitting the brothels and the gambling dens, but Shi Hongxuan's idea of fun is to run brothels and gambling dens. That broker house on Donglong Street is also his shop, and its internal dealings implicate plenty of imperial court bigwigs, all of whom have fields and businesses at stake in his hands, so they have no choice but to give him face. This time, it's 4 million, but how much will it be the next time? The Northeast Provisions bridle path is only opened twice every year. How to hide and spend that much silver are all issues you have to think through very carefully. No one has ever broken through the Shi clan's money vault, so putting the money inside is the most secure. No matter how that money is spent now, it'd be hard to escape the eyes of the imperial court. The accounts of your 20,000-strong imperial army already have to be checked and triple-checked in successive order. If this sum of money is not spent and disposed of perfectly, Then the second young master would have to be detained in jail to await trial. His curiosity piqued. Xiao Qie said, spending money, huh? What else is there other than frittering it away by playing and having fun? Or are you preparing to save it for Zhongbo? Nowhere in mind for the money to go to for the time being. Seeing that it was almost time, Shen Zichuan fastened his cloak with one hand. The second young master doesn't handle household affairs, so how would you know how valuable the daily staples like tea, rice, oil, and salt are? There will be plenty of uses for the money in the future, so there's no harm in keeping it on hand, even if we can't spend it all for the time being. It's better to be prepared for all contingencies. Both of them were clearly set on defrauding Shi Hongxian by convening in this way to discuss the latter's household finances and assets with such serious expressions. Xiao Qie still had to return to Kaling River, and after saying a few words, he had to leave. He had rushed over as soon as he had the free time to see Shen Zichuan, and now, having fed the latter, he could not afford to sit and linger any longer. As Xiao Qie turned over to mount his horse, he recalled something else and pulled the reins to say, "The inspection will happen these 2 days. The Grand Secretariat has already proposed a candidate for the Provincial Administration Commissioner for the 6 prefectures of Zhongbo. That Jiang Qingshan of Jueshi had hurried over to report to Kudu on imperial orders. My guess is that it's likely him. I've long heard of his name and reputation. I remembered how he displayed courage and foresight when he handled the aid relief efforts for the 13 cities of Jueshi 6 years ago." At this point, Shen Zichuan recalled that this person was also on good terms with Xue Xiuzhua and could not help but hesitate. Although his personal friendship with Xue Xiuzhua is pretty good, it does not necessarily mean that he's in Xue Xiuzhua's camp. When he enters the capital, you can meet him to try to get a grasp on him. He isn't a descendant of a noble clan, and he doesn't rely on the noble clans for backing. You can decide for yourself whether or not we can use him when the time comes. Seeing Shen Zichuan standing on the steps, Xiao Qie raised a hand to beckon to him. Shen Zichuan was all ears to hear him out. He did not expect Xiao Qie to simply say nothing and merely caressed a handful of his hair with his palm. With a lift of its hooves, Lang Dao Shui Jin broke into a gallop. Ji Qingqing pushed the gates open, and Xiao Qie rode away into the night. Chapter 81, Shadows. Chapter 81, Shadows. The food in the prison was unclean, and so Shi Hongxian suffered a stomach upset. His constitution was already weakened during the epidemic, and now he was in even more of a misery. He was not in a good state mentally, so he often fell into a lethargic sleep. Furthermore, it was dark all around each time he woke up, and gradually, he lost track of time. Without any window to ventilate the room, this narrow and cramped room smelled foul and stale, with a damp, musty smell thrown in for effect. There was no way an ordinary man would be able to endure it. Shi Hongxian was badly ill, yet he was unable to turn and move his body as freely as he would have wanted. All he could do was to lay paralyzed on the straw mat and let his consciousness drift along with the dampness and cold. As usual, the warden moved the flap open and stuffed the rice inside, but he did not hear any movements from Shi Hongxian today. He looked in through the hole, but all he could see was Shi Hongxian's drooping arm. The warden was afraid that Shi Hongxian had died, thus he opened the door and took the lamp to shake it in front of Shi Hongxian's face. Shi Hongxian struggled to open his eyes. With dry lips and a parched mouth, he said, "Sir, please spare me some water." The warden flipped his hand over and poured a bowl of water onto Shi Hongxian's face. Shi Hongxian exerted himself to open his mouth to receive the water, hardly bothering with his dampened collars. He drank the water and pulled himself together to say, "Thank you, thank you." The warden threw the bowl away, then grabbed the oil lamp and made to leave. With an unexpected burst of strength, Shi Hongxian suddenly grabbed hold of the warden's clothes. He forced out a smile on his chubby face and said, "Buddy, tell me. This This place is not the prison at all, am I right?" The warden swatted off Shi Hongxian's hand. But Shi Hongxian burst out laughing in a hoarse voice instead, gasping violently as he lay on the straw mat. He pulled at the front of his soaked clothes and moved his eye to stare at the pitch-dark roof. He said, "This place isn't the prison. I should have thought of it a long time ago. It has already been a few days. Even if Kong Chiu doesn't interrogate me, There should be officials from the Ministry of Justice coming over to make their rounds for a check. Too quiet. It's too quiet here, Shi Hongxian said, then swiftly fixed his eyes on the warden in a stare. I've done some calculations. You come to deliver food every day at precisely the same time, and you even push and put the tray into exactly the same position. Buddy, the average warden isn't this rigid. It has already been a few days, and nobody came to exchange shifts with you in guarding the prison door. You wouldn't even accept my money, and even these sleeves of yours are so clean and tidy without so much a speck of grease and dust. You are well built and tall, discreet and reticent. You are an imperial bodyguard, right? The warden's face was expressionless as he carried the oil lamp and walked away to close the door. Shi Hongxian listened to the sound of metal chains winding around it, then pounded his fists hard on the straw mat under him. Shunzichuan. Shunzichuan. Shi Hongxian pounded until his knuckles reddened. He abruptly let loose a shout at the top of his voice, plotting against me. To think you'd scheme against me. You. Tell him. Tell him to come. There was no response from the darkness. Shi Hongxian dug his fingers into the straw mat. His consciousness was in a muddle as he spat hatefully. He wants money, doesn't he? Call him over. As long as he let me out, as long as he let me out. He forcefully swallowed his saliva, then suddenly pulled at his hair and gasped, I'll give him money. I can't fucking stand this anymore. The warden sat down outside with the oil lamp next to him and popped the broad beans into his mouth to down with his wine. With the metal door behind him blocking off Shi Hongxian, all that could be heard from within was the sound of faint sobs and whimpers, much like the wind in the dead of the night. Shi Hongxian's eyes had turned cloudy. He did not dare to sleep again out of fear that he would not wake up if he fell asleep. By the time Shunzichuan came again, he had already calmed down. Shunzichuan remained on his feet as he sized up Shi Hongxian. Shi Hongxian once had a narrow escape from the jaws of death when he headed out to sea. Ever since he fought his way back from certain death, he had never cut such a sorry sight. He was different from the other descendants of the noble clans. He was not afraid of being caught in desperate situations, nor was he afraid of looking wretched. He let Shunzichuan look as he strained his dry and hoarse throat to let out an unwarranted laugh for a moment before he said, Lanju, you have gut. 4 million. I nearly met my end being fleeced by you. This hadn't been an easy place to find. It mustn't be too conspicuous, and it can't be too far away. Shunzichuan let out a soft sigh. I sure wasn't expecting you to be this meticulous and discerning in your observations. Shi Hongxian shook his arm and said, Men die for money, while birds die for food. Brother, I'm more than willing to give you this sum of money, but you can't simply want my life for just this bit of money. His tone was a little weak and unsteady, but hunger and illness were not able to deprive him of the ability to adapt to his circumstances. He continued, Lanju. I could have still pretended to be in the dark. I'm the only one who knows where the Shi clan's keys are. I could have run around in circles with you and extracted myself out of here through trickery. But see, I didn't do so. I still hold this bit of brotherhood to heart. Lanju. We joined forces to kill Shi Jiyuan and Ji Lei. You are now the target of envy in the imperial bodyguards. If you screw me to death now, you will lose the Shi clan's support. The more you climb your way up in the imperial bodyguards, the narrower the path you have to navigate. You already know what it feels like to be stuck in a situation so difficult that you can hardly move a step forward, don't you? Which of those old men with hereditary positions in noble clans will be willing to submit to you? You are an ambitious one. Isn't it also on my account that Han Cheng could tolerate you? If you kill me, you will become the target of all. Shunzichuan squatted down, holding a handkerchief between his fingers as he looked at Shi Hongxian and sought his advice with a serious expression. Then, in your opinion, what should I do? Shi Hongxian had seen this expression of Shunzichuan countless times. He knew that there was no doubt Shunzichuan's intent to kill had been ignited. So he dripped with cold sweat as he traded gazes with Shunzichuan for a moment before he replied, We haven't reached the point where we fall out with one another. Shunzichuan, I lost this time, I concede. It's not a disgrace at all to suffer a business defeat. There's no need for me to create a scene and fall out with you over this bit of trivial matter. I fear you. This is the truth. But it's also precisely because of this fear that I want to continue to work with you. Think about it. If you kill me, you will only have 4 million. But if you have me in your grasp, then you'll have the Shi clan's mountains of gold and silver. I concede defeat. So why get your hands stained with this bit of blood? We still have all the days ahead of us to lord it over Kudu. That's a fair point. Shun Zichuan said. But it's a tad too easy to dismiss me with just the words concede defeat, isn't it? I heard that the second young master has 68 keys. So how about we split them 40-60? It'd also set my mind at ease. Shi Hongxian slowly propped himself up. The expression in his eyes as he looked at Shun Zichuan was ferocious as he said, I can give you the keys. But once you take the keys, you can't ask for Qi Hualien again. How about it? Are you willing? Shun Zichuan slowly raised his fingers before putting it down again as if he was bored stiff. He said, you think Qi Hualien is worth this sum? Naturally, I want the keys. Since he's worth nothing, then it's pointless to retain him. I'm killing him then. Shun Zichuan suddenly began to laugh. He said, you think I don't know where he is? We are already at this point, and you still want to test me. You're the one who's testing me. Shi Hongxian crawled slowly towards Shun Zichuan, finally revealing a savage expression. I understand you. Lanju, the same trick is useless if you play it one time too many. You are accustomed to deceive others with words. The more you pretend not to give a hoot about someone at this moment, the more important they are to you. You tricked me once that day in the courtyard, and now you still want to use the same trick on me. I, Shi Hongxian, may not be a person of outstanding smarts, but I'm also not dumb to that extent. You don't know where he is. If you know, haha, then you'd have killed me after getting the money. So how did it go, Shun Zichuan? Am I correct in saying that you still couldn't find him despite searching all over Kudu? Shun Zichuan slightly tightened his grip on his handkerchief. Shi Hongxian smoothed aside his messy hair and said, as much as you may be eloquent, you've forgotten one thing, and that is, your meticulous and careful concealment of him is already enough to make me suspicious. Even if I believe you a little, I still have to be on guard against you. The thing to fear when having dealings with you is that you turn around and give me a stab. Shun Zichuan's eyes were emotionless as he looked at Shi Hongxian and said, then, what do you want? I want to get out of here. Shi Hongxian pointed at the door. I want to walk out of here unscathed. If I can't get out tonight, then Qi Hualien's corpse will be left on your doorstep tomorrow morning. Do you believe me? You can try me. Shi Dan, that traitorous bastard who betrayed his master for wealth, must have told you that all the men under my command are children of the domestic slaves in our clan. My safety concerns the safety of hundreds of people. Even if I can't get out, I still have plenty of ways at my disposal to kill off Qi Hualien. You're lying. Shun Zichuan suddenly got up, and that dreary, ruthless emotion within him burst forth in this filthy room. He took a few steps back, taking advantage of the dimness to blur that face of his into some kind of behemoth lurking in the dark. This place is isolated from outsiders. How are you passing on the message to others? Tricking me even when death is near at hand, and you still tell me to try you? Shun Zichuan said with a shadow of a smile in a frosty tone, sure then. Let's us try. I'll send you on your way out. If I could be on guard against you in advance, then why couldn't I take precautions against you prior? Shi Hongxian was drenched in cold sweat on seeing the situation deteriorate. He promptly raised his voice, I've long told the guards on watch that I'll head down once every half a month. If I don't, then they will strike. You asked me the last time if I dare to believe your words. Shun Zichuan, this time I'm asking you, do you dare to believe the same? Shun Zichuan did not make a sound. Shi Hongxian then slowed his tone, as if soothing him. Since you can buy over Shi Dan, then you must have already known that I am the only one who knows where Qi Hualien is. I've long understood that no one in this world can be trusted, so I have left countless escape routes in place for myself. Lanju, why must we both be on the losing end? It doesn't benefit either of us to infuriate each other. Aren't you making all these moves for the sake of gains? This deal is so unprofitable, no doubt you won't do it. Whatever it is that you're lacking, I have it all, and I'll give it to you. You only need to lend me this guts and wisdom of yours, and we can thrive and flourish in Kudu. Look at that Li Jianheng. He's a good emperor, one that's few and far between. He signifies an even faster path to success for men like you and me. This is a meteoric rise we're talking about, Lanju. Do you think Xiao II would be able to accept you if you kill me and offend the noble clans? How long can the Xiao clan's prestigious reputation of being infallible and undefeated in battles continue on for? Xiao Fengshu is already old. If Xiao Jiming were to die too, then what is Xiao II alone good for? They are doomed to fail and fall. Shi Hongxian seemed to lament, and at the same time, encourage. Lanju, you and I both have had a hard time being under the control of others, and now you still want to choose to submit to Xiao II and be at his beck and call? The only things in this world that can never abandon you are power and money. Join forces with me, and I'll give you money. You just need to help me keep the Shi clan's reputation intact, and we can bring our business deal up a level. When that time comes, it'd be hard for anyone jockeying for power to sway you and me from our positions. You previously wanted me to swallow up the other clans and proclaim myself king. So why are you now bound by constraints and limits yourself? Then, there's the 6 prefectures of Zhongbua. Don't you want to rebuild Zhongbua to avenge yourself for the humiliation you suffered in the past? Shun Wei's name can never be fully cleared, but you can use money to smash the gates to Zhongbua open. They are currently so poor that they even exchange children for food in their dire straits. You'll be like a deity who has descended from heaven. By that time, who would still dare to refuse to yield to you? Who would still dare to curse you? These are all what money can give you. Can the Empress Dowager do the same? Can Xiao II do the same? Lanju, what are you still hesitating for? We can still continue to join forces and climb our way up to the top just like before. Shun Zichuan was moved by his words. He no longer seemed to be brimming with murderous intent, and his tone had also softened some as he said, "If you had been this candid way earlier, we would not have to go as far as to face off each other in a confrontation, isn't it? You're right. It's by joining forces that you and I can save ourselves a lot of troubles. I'm a merchant. To a businessman, profit comes first. If there isn't that much of a benefit to our collaboration, then why would I waste my breath like this?" Shi Hongxuan's back itched. The part that had been wounded by the collapse the last time was scabbing over, and it itched so much these days that it hurt. He took a little breather, then continued, "Then there's no time to lose. Let me out now. Once I'm out, we can sit down for a proper discussion." Shi Hongxian had more than 10 martial arts experts from the martial fraternity in the Shi residence in Kudu. He had spent a large sum of money to hire them to intimidate Shun Zichuan the last time, and he had always kept them in his residence. In truth, he was already burning with anxiety, because he could not figure out what Shun Zichuan was thinking. As such, he had also started to harbor the intent to kill, determined as he was to burn his bridges and fight to the end. No matter what, he had to get out of here first. It was only by getting out that there would be a variable he could exploit to turn things around. He wanted to kill Shun Zichuan so much that he could not even wait for tomorrow, much less engage in diplomacy with him. Being able to deal with each other for a long time often meant that both parties were evenly matched. They had the room to be able to sit down and trade barbs. Shi Hongxian felt that the present him and Shun Zichuan had already lost this balance. It was as if he had fallen into a certain kind of pouch that Shun Zichuan had bound to hold him in check as Shun Zichuan climbed his way up the official ranks, thereby rendering him incapable of controlling and swaying the development of the situation like he could at the outset. Shi Hongxian still did not know where the problem lay, but based on his businessman's instinct, he had already discovered his current plight in which he was turning around in circles like a man under a spell too had everything to do with Shun Zichuan. They had been working together in cahoots to this date, but other than killing Shi Jiyuan to get his hands on the Shi clan's keys, the sweetness of every benefit Shi Hongxian has had a taste of in all that had happened afterwards had been fleeting. Only Shun Zichuan had truly scaled to greater heights with power firmly in hand. Shi Hongxian was sure that he had been made a fool of, but he still had a look of sincerity on his face. It was as if he admired Shun Zichuan to the point he worshipped the ground Shun Zichuan walked on, while at the same time, feared him to the point he dared not take any action. Qiao Tianya pushed the door crack open and cast the light from the oil lamp inside. Shun Zichuan's exposed wrists were clean. With his side bathed in the light from the lamp, he looked no different from the way he appeared in the daytime as he said politely, "After you, please." Shi Hongxian inwardly breathed a sigh of relief. Chapter 82, Debt Collection. Chapter 82, Debt Collection. The Shi residence was located in an inner street of Kudu, slightly to the south. In comparison to the Pan's and Fei's residences, its total land area was significantly smaller. It was also near Prince Qin's manor during the reign of Emperor Guangcheng. The Shi had special permission, but the first few clan heads had much foresight and did not dare build their mansion beyond what was permitted in the regulations. The interior architectural style of the residence was more the style of Jueshi, while the building structures such as pavilions and terraces were all average and common. Shi Hongxian was on tenterhooks the entire journey back, but once he heard the sounds of horse hooves come to a stop, he knew he was home. Not daring to be careless, he bunched up the hem of his robe, which had been soaked until it was wrinkled, and hurried off the carriage, where he saw Shun Zichuan standing before him sizing up the Shi's residence. "It's an old mansion." Shi Hongxian's tone was light and relaxed as he tried to keep up with his normal behavior. "Even though we keep saying all these years that we want to renovate it, we never had the time. Come over in a few days when the weather gets warmer to take a look at the blueprint too." Yet, Shun Zichuan turned his gaze towards the house next door. Those green glazed tiles at that end were obviously standard specifications one of a prince's residence. But the lush trees covering the vermilion walls only made it look eerie. Shi Hongxian followed his gaze over and said, "That's the Prince Qin's manor." Prince Qin suffered from tuberculosis and passed away from his illness a year before the former emperor's ascension to the throne. This residence then fell into disuse. It'll probably be bestowed upon someone as a reward in the future. It looks even more imposing than Prince Chu's manor. Shun Zichuan did not shift his gaze away. "Of course." Shi Hongxian raised his thumb. The current emperor was not a child favored by Emperor Guangcheng. At that time, the crown prince, Prince Qin, and the former emperor were the most outstanding ones among the imperial heirs. A pity the crown prince committed suicide at Jiaozui Temple. Prince Qin passed away of illness in his residence, and the former emperor lingered on his deathbed. He suddenly smiled. Otherwise, how could the current emperor have had the chance to sit on the throne? Prince Qin was also quite the pitiable one. He initially had a close father and son relationship with Emperor Guangcheng during Emperor Guangcheng's last few years, and Emperor Guangcheng often came here. But someone in the manor under him used his influence to commit violence and beat a few villagers to death. Consequently, a lawsuit was lodged against him, and Emperor Guangcheng punished him by putting him under house arrest in this residence. It was during that time Prince Qin contracted tuberculosis. Emperor Guangcheng even made a special trip down for a visit. No one knew what they talked about, but they eventually parted on bad terms, and from then on, Prince Qin fell out of favor. That punishment to self-reflect behind closed doors dragged on, keeping him locked up until his death. Shun Zichuan tucked this piece of information away in his mind, but he had no wish to discuss it with Shi Hongxian. When Shi Hongxian saw that he had no interest in continuing the topic, he raised his hand to wave away the servants who were swarming over to them. He said, "Although this residence of mine is not as big as the residences of princes and aristocrats, there's still some way to travel. Lanju, my body is extremely weak, and I stink to high heavens. It'll be faster if we take a ride in the small sedan too." The servants from the Shi's residence rushed to prepare the sedans. Shi Dan was originally the household steward, but he did not dare to show himself now, and it was instead Shi Hongxian's eldest sister-in-law who came out to greet and welcome them. Shi Hongxian loved this woman, or at least he said so himself. He had repeated countless times to Shun Zichuan that he wanted to kill Shi Jiyuan because of the hatred he bore Shi Jiyuan for seizing his wife away by force. But then, his expression was indifferent as he watched that woman descend the stairs. He did not ask for her to help support him either, and simply dismissed her in a perfunctory manner as he took his seat in the small sedan. Shun Zichuan lifted the curtain with a finger and saw it all clearly. Qiao Tianya, who was following outside the sedan, wanted to speak, but Shun Zichuan gave a slight shake of his head to stop him. The small sedans entered the Shi's residence and made several turns before arriving at the courtyard where Shi Hongxian usually stayed. His courtyard was different from others. It was not overly decorated, and the long corridor was connected to an office with wide-opened doors and windows, as well as a row of brightly lit lanterns. The sound of abacus within, mingled with various local accents, proved to be particularly noisy. There was a tea table erected under a mat awning on the open ground before the front hall, and seated and standing underneath the awning were the various shopkeepers and bookkeepers who had come from all over Dazhou. At the sight of Shi Hongxian, this motley crew of people all stood up and crowded around him. Those who were here to report expenses, prepare stocks, demand payments, and send greetings mobbed him all around, creating a din. Shi Hongxian first bowed to the crowd in a greeting, then said, "This humble one has only just returned. Look, with how stinky I smell, I won't be able to do any work. There's no need for any of you to be anxious. Wait here with peace of mind and take turns to go into the office on that end one at a time. As for me, I had merely headed out these few days for some fun. It's nothing of importance. Our business will naturally continue as usual. Oh, as for the shopkeepers here to demand payment, there's no need for you to fret as well. When has the Shi clan ever missed our deadlines and defaulted on our debts? As long as you have the memorandum with you, I will pay back all substantiated claims in full." Shi Hongxian hurriedly held Sun Zichuan firm as he pushed aside the crowd and called for the attendants to hurry over and serve tea and attend to them. He cupped his hands to those people the entire way before he managed to lead Sun Zichuan to a relatively quiet hall at the back. "Lanju, take a seat first. I'll go wash up a little and have a change of clothes before I return." Shi Hongxian shook his dirty robe and instructed the servants to prepare the food and wine. Sun Zichuan took his seat and drank the tea. By the time the wine and food to go with wine were served, Shi Hongxian had returned too. He was dressed in a brand new dark reddish-brown silk robe. He took his seat and personally poured wine for Sun Zichuan. "Sorry to have kept you waiting." Shi Hongxian touched the flesh between his neck and let out a cheeky chuckle. "Home is still where I feel comfortable. That cell is so awfully damp. I feel so refreshed all over now that I'm done washing up. Here, Lanju, drink up. You really did not show mercy this time. A few more days locked up in there, and I'll be dead meat for sure." "It won't go as far as that," Sun Zichuan said with a smile. "That was just to intimidate you. I won't deal you such a vicious blow for the sake of our friendship. You really caused me so much grief." Shi Hongxian groused with a bitter smile. "The state of my back looked to be in a frightfully bad state. I'll still have to call for a physician over to take a look at it later. Say, wouldn't it do for you to just tell me outright if you lack that 4 million? You just had to go around in such a big circle." Both men chatted merrily over wine, showing no signs of the mutual hostility an hour earlier when they had been at daggers drawn with each other. The wine was excellent, as were the dishes. It was only when Shi Hongxian was almost done eating that he wiped his mouth with a hand towel and spread his arms apart to sprawl back on the chair. He said, "It's not like I'm unwilling to give you the keys you want. But Lanju, you can't have your cake and eat it too. If I return Qi Hualien to you, then I'd lost something to fall back on, so I can't hand the keys over to you on top of him." Sun Zichuan, who did not eat much, set down his chopsticks and said, "I've done you a disservice in this matter too. But second young master, there are some matters which I didn't make up myself. Go make some inquiries out there, and you'll know that Wei Huaigu truly doesn't harbor good intentions and has no wish to help you out of your predicament at all. I know they all have their own ulterior motives." Shi Hongxian wiped away the fine beads of sweat. "But since you were able to get me out of prison to another place, it means that the imperial court didn't hand down that much of a punishment on me. This was His Majesty's idea, right? His Majesty went to great effort to protect you, so the prison can't overstep their authority to investigate you. Now that you have been temporarily suspended from your post and have returned home, you won't be able to carry out your duties in the Bureau of Evaluations." Sun Zichuan changed the topic. "I've already sent you back home. The issue of the keys can be renegotiated, but I want to see Qi Hualien now." Shi Hongxian threw aside the hand towel and smiled as he rubbed his stomach. He said, "As for the keys, we have to discuss and come to an understanding now. Lanju, you've never conducted a business deal before, so you aren't aware of the ins and outs of it. It's not the slightest bit simpler than being an official. Holding those keys will allow you to transfer out the silvers, but those are deadweight silvers. If you take them out, you will sooner or later come to spend it all clean. So why not put it inside and let me continue to take care of the business? Isn't it wonderful to let your money beget more money for you? However much you need in the future, all you have to do is to just give me a number. He sat tight in his chair. The earlier din had already disappeared without them realizing it. The windows and doors in his hall were all wide open, and the weeping willows outside, shrouded in the color of ink, looked like a row of hanged ghosts cramming at the windows looking in. The endless night was still and quiet, and the candle flame blazed a little. Those servants that had been waiting upon them all seemed to have vanished. It was as if both of them were the only ones left. Shen Zichuan slowly leaned back in his chair and said, "How the situation has changed. After stepping out of that prison cell, the second young master has indeed toughened up. I'm satiated after having had my fill of food and wine, and I'm not hurting anymore." Shi Hongxian looked at Shen Zichuan and pointed to his own head, "And I'm still sober. I'm telling you, it's not a choice between Qi Hualien and the keys. Your only option is to take Qi Hualien away. As long as you give the nod, I will give him to you immediately." Shen Zichuan took his time. The little bamboo fan slid out from his sleeve pocket, and he grasped it for a moment to weigh it up. He said, "That's not what we discussed earlier." Shi Hongxian answered in a low, muffled voice, "The world of business is ever changing at a rapid pace. Earlier, you held me by the balls, and now, I'm the one who has you by the balls. The issues under discussion naturally have to change following this shift. What if I insist on both?" Shen Zichuan smiled. "Then it will all come to naught." Shi Hongxian patted his belly. "Let me offer you a piece of advice, Lanju. Don't be that greedy son of a bitch. As the saying goes, be content with your lot. You have already taken away 4 million. I won't pursue it further. This is already enough for a gesture of goodwill, right? Before the money has been delivered into my hands, it does not count as having taken it." Shen Zichuan did not divulge to him the part where these 4 million taels would be split into 2 portions to be transported through the Northeast Provisions bridle path. Instead, he said, "It's not an easy journey to make either. You know it better than I do. I have the channels for escorting the goods. No matter how competent Jiang Qingshan is, he can't keep an eye down there all the time." Shi Hongxian had already gained the upper hand. "I can think of ways to get the money to you. I said it before, and I'll say it again. Lanju, I'm willing to give you these 4 million. But you have to tell me the truth. Are the 3 incidents of collapse, flooding, and epidemic you're doing?" "Of course not," Shen Zichuan said. "I've long told you the honest truth. For this matter, you have to ask Xue Xiuzhua. I can see you keeping a tight grip over these keys, so I won't insist on it. As you've said, we cannot do without the other if we want to join forces. Now, can you give me Qi Hualien already?" Shi Hongxian pushed his chair aside to get up and say, "I've long gotten someone to go get him. You have been waiting for so many days, there's no need to fret over waiting a little longer now." With his rotund pot-belly, he took some steps to aid digestion. Looking as if he was considering something, he eventually walked his way to the door and strode a step out, where he shouted, "Where's the man?" The servant outside whispered something in reply. Not hearing it clearly, Shi Hongxian continued down the stairs. He took a few more steps once he had descended. The courtyard was dead silent. He suddenly jerked around and bellowed, "Shut the doors." All at once, the wide-opened doors of the hall were shut tight, and the windows were secured with slabs of planks amid the sounds of thud. In the blink of an eye, the hall was completely sealed. Amidst the rustle of the night wind, which sent the grim willows swaying, several figures gradually materialized out of the night to lay siege to the hall. Shi Hongxian gritted his teeth in hatred as he ripped off his mask and said, "Shen Zichuan, you still want back Qi Hualien? How insatiably greedy of you, just like a snake trying to swallow an elephant. For treating me like a fool to push around, I shall take your life tonight." He retreated a few more steps back. "Drag over that double-crossing Shi Dan, who bites the hand that feeds him." Shi Dan had already been securely bound up by the others. On seeing him, Shi Hongxian first gave him a kick to the face and sent him toppling over to the ground before he stomped violently on him. The audacity of you to sell your master out for money, despicable bastard, rotten piece of shit. You forgot that I have your parents in my hands. I shall have your whole family follow him to the grave tonight. His eyes were already blazing with hatred as he spoke. Drag the eldest mistress up here too. Does she really think I don't know she's addicted to hooking up with this lowlife behind my back? Shi Dan, with that pea-sized gut of yours, you would never dare to betray me. But lust is like a blade hanging above your head. 3. Who can you blame if you let someone get a handle against you and ended up involved in the whole sordid affair of betraying your master for money? Scum. Shi Dan was kicked until he rolled all over the ground and howled in pain, while that eldest mistress, whose legs had turned to jelly, was flung before Shi Hongxian, where she wailed and pleaded ceaselessly. Shi Hongxian let her hug his thigh as he looked at her and said grimly, "Do you know he wanted to harm me? You know, and you still want to follow him. Were you already planning how to make your escape to somewhere far away with him? I've never treated anyone better in this life than I treated you. I put in 100% of my love and handed over 80% of my life. And this is how you treat me." With a pair of red eyes, Shi Hongxian hauled up the eldest mistress. "Shi Jiyuan snatched you away, and I snatched you back. I give you the same honor and prestige you have always enjoyed, and give you gold and jade so you never lacked for nothing. I hold you in both hands like my most precious treasure. You. Shi Hongxian was so consumed by hatred that his heart was dripping blood. "Leave with him. I'll send you both on your way tonight." Shi Hongxian shoved her down coldly and spat, then said with a fiendish smile, "Draw your blade. Mince up these heartless and ungrateful creatures, and we can save on the dishes to go with the wine tonight. This second master has the money." He fished out large quantities of gold and silver ingots from his bosom and sleeves and dropped them to the ground, where they rolled with a clatter. Amid the sound of money colliding against each other, Shi Hongxian staggered a few steps and burst out laughing with tears streaming down his face until his laughs gradually gave way to sobs. All beings in this world are driven by benefits. I have money. So why bemoan the lack of someone true to me? For money, one can kill their closest kin, their flesh and blood, their beloved. Having thrown away all his gold and silver, Shi Hongxian raised both of his arms high and shouted himself hoarse under the glint of cold steel, "Do it. I'm here to collect my debt." The crowd promptly drew their blades, and snow-white light flashed. Chapter 83, Scenery of Spring. Chapter 83, Scenery of Spring. Overcast clouds shrouded the moon, giving rise to flickers of ghostly apparitions. The scraping sound of blades being unsheathed was just like the sound of silk being ripped apart in the wind, the tearing of which spelled the pressing sense of danger of an imminent peril. There were 3 taps of the bamboo fan in the hall. Shun Zichuan remained calm and composed as he held the pot to pour himself another cup of wine. "You're right." Shun Zichuan picked up the wine cup. "We indeed have scores to settle tonight." Shi Hongxian lowered his arms and watched with cool detachment as the crowd swarmed towards the hall. He said, "Clever as you are, if you had been willing to comply obediently with the arrangements, you wouldn't have needed to suffer as much. The moment you enter Kudu, you're just like a caged bird in a pavilion, unmindful of the spreading blaze and danger ahead. You're really an unfortunate and a fortunate one. Back then, you fought the waves for a fighting chance at life, and for that, I toast you." As Shun Zichuan spoke, he slowly poured the wine over the ground. "You and I both understand the principle that those trapped in prior predicaments are also the ones most unlikely to be obedient, because people who obey, 9 out of 10, will not hold out until heaven opens its eyes and lends them a hand. I fought against the battering of waves, and you are also fighting against the same. The lives of everyone in the world are worthless. Shun Zichuan, I toast you too. You survived in spite of all the torture and torment back then, but tonight, you are going to fail miserably, like a boat capsizing in a drain, haha." Shi Hongxian laughed derisively, then abruptly turned indifferent. "Between you and me, only one may live. You've taken your bath and drank your wine." Shun Zichuan tossed away the wine cup gently and rose to face the doors. He lifted his hand and grasped the hilt of Yang Shan Shui, his thumb pressing down against that white pearl as he laughed softly. Do you really not intend to tell me Chi Hualian's whereabouts before you go on your way? The flame in the courtyard abruptly intensified. Shi Hongxian turned his head for a look. The residence was already up in flames. He bellowed, "Don't bother contending with him. Whoever can take down his head, I'll reward said person with 200 taels of gold and silver." The doors and windows instantly broke apart as numerous shadows pounced like wolves. Shun Zichuan's blade had already left its sheath. He took 2 steps forward, and blood went splattering along with the movement of his blade. The long blade that was Yang Shan Shui seemed to be forged from ice and cast of snow as its blade slit open men's throats. It was so fast that there was not a stain of blood on the edge of the blade even as the blood droplets spattered over the window's paper. Yang Shan Shui was the same as Lung Li blade. They lay low in this kudu collecting dust, restrained by their sheaths to become the waist ornaments of refined young masters. But give them the chance to be drawn out of their sheaths, and one would be able to catch a glimpse of the bloodthirsty savagery of the blades and their masters from those cold glints. The tongue of flames came licking in a fury, and in a blink of an eye, half of the Shi's residence was engulfed in a sea of fire. Xiao Tianya leaped up the rooftop and dashed along the ridge to kick over the incoming killers with swift flying kicks before he hooked himself upside down and flipped atop the central hall. He stood on the roof and flashed Shun Zichuan's gold-lacquered waist token. The Imperial bodyguards are investigating a case on Imperial orders. The Shi clan assembled more than 100 gallant men from the martial fraternity for a private gathering right under the sun of heaven's nose. Our investigations have unearthed the presence of criminal fugitives and outlaws still at large among them. Shi Hongxuan's intention is no small matter. For this, he ought to be executed. Xiao Tianya said in a clear and loud voice. This case pertains to the incident in which the Son of Heaven was placed in harm's way. Anyone caught involved will be taken into custody at the Imperial prison. The Red Cavalry too has already surrounded Shi's residence. You people'd best surrender without a fight. Don't listen to his nonsense. Shi Hongxian shouted. I'm the Son of Heaven's friend, one who has been through life and death with him. The Imperial bodyguards harbor the intent to murder loyal ministers to cover up their crimes. Those who aid me tonight are all upright heroes. You will all follow me to the palace gates tomorrow morning to receive your rewards. That burning loft collapsed with a thunderous crash. Shi Hongxian did not retreat a single step amid the waves of heat as he stared closely at the figure in the hall. That eunuch faction has only just been eradicated. His Majesty advocates freedom of speech, and what he hates the most are treacherous officials like Shun Zichuan who want to abuse his power to deceive the masses and lord it over all. Gentlemen, the one who kills him will be a famous hero with his meritorious deeds recorded in history for ages to come. Xiao Tianya secretly spat. This fatty Shi's eloquence was truly outstanding. If they could not gag that mouth of his, then he could even make black out to be white. Xiao Tianya promptly kept away the token and leaped down, where he drew his blade to face the enemies head-on. The sheen of blood stood out against the blaze in the courtyard. Up ahead, the scene was already in chaos, with shouts and cries everywhere as shopkeepers, bookkeepers, and servants ran haphazardly all around. The formation of Red Cavalry outside moved swiftly, having already blocked off all the gates. A strapping figure suddenly stood out from the hall. Shi Hongxian looked on indifferently. That body leaned back, as straight as a ramrod, and toppled over onto the stairs, the blood on its neck gushing forth incessantly. Shun Zichuan withdrew his blade and returned it to his sheath, then strode over the corpse's arm and walked down one step at a time. Shi Hongxian suddenly burst out laughing. He laughed until he shook all over. He said, I still can't compare to you. By using this reason to kill me, even His Majesty won't dare to blame or censure you. Shun Zichuan inclined his head to survey that raging fire and said, You aren't originally meant to die this early. Shi Hongxian looked up at the sky and let out a long sigh. He was extraordinarily calm. Those merry laughters and furious curses had all become a thing of the past. He said, Whether I die early or later, I'm still being played for the fool in your hands. It's too fucking much of an aggrievement, but it's of no loss to me to lose to you. Shun Zichuan, I concede defeat. At the same time, I can't take it lying down. 100 forges to temper steel 3, do you think you have already reached that stage? The reason I meet my end tonight is because I underestimated my enemy. However, there are plenty of people in this world who see you as the thorn in their side. They are all lined up in a queue waiting for you. You may kill one, then another one, but you will never be able to kill them all. How lamentable. He gazed silently at the night sky. You and I were not born to be favored. Things that are readily available to the others are yet things you and I have to fight for with our lives. The prejudice between children born of the principal wives and concubines is deeply rooted. For how absurd is it for me to be clearly born of the principal wife, yet live a life worse than the sons from the other clans born of concubines? My life is worthless, and yours, even more so. You want to charge ahead, to fight, to seize. But who exactly will succeed or fail in the days to come? Shi Hongxian spread his arms open, as if he was asking heaven. At the same time, it was also as if he was asking Shen Zichuan, there is no end to strife. Who exactly will fail or succeed in the days to come? Will you be able to secure your victory once I'm gone? You kill the others, and the others kill you. Ha ha. The sounds of Shi Hongxuan's laughter were wild and unbridled. He suddenly crouched down to pull out the blade from the corpse on the ground and stumbled his way closer towards Shen Zichuan. I'm a man of the Shi clan. In this life, I've triumphed thrice over Shi Jiyuan. I'm no less inferior to him. It's my parents who were blind. I placed my love in the wrong person, and exhausted all my love and hatred. Shi Hongxian brandished the blade to slit his own throat. Hot blood spurted over Shen Zichuan's body. The blade tumbled to the ground, and he pulled at Shen Zichuan's sleeve as he slid down to his knees along with the blade, slurring his words as he completed the last of his words with a forced smile. Shall wait for you. On the path to the underworld, Shen Zichuan watched Shi Hongxian fall at his feet. Warm blood trickled down his fingers. He stood in silence for a very long time against a backdrop of roaring fire, then lifted his hand to shake off the droplets of blood. The Shi residence was burned to ashes, and the imperial bodyguards brought the remaining survivors in the Shi's residence into the imperial prison. Shen Zichuan had Shi Hongxuan's deeds, in which he amassed hired hands and resisted arrest, all recorded in a memorial which he submitted to Li Jianheng to make his report when he met with the latter personally. Li Jianheng was greatly shocked, but there was irrefutable evidence of Shi Hongxian gathering men in his estate, and the imperial bodyguards had thoroughly checked the backgrounds of these people through the Ministry of Justice. This matter was handled so impeccably with no loose ends that even the imperial censors could find no fault with it. Wei Huaigu was the most slick and sly. On seeing this, he promptly hinted to his pupils to first denounce Shi Hongxian as a treacherous villain who had poisoned the Son of Heaven's mind and led him astray, before decrying Shi Hongxian for putting His Majesty in harm's way. The collapse of the Ohua Pavilion was actually entirely staged by himself. The Wei clan really went all out to absolve themselves of blame. Such was the state of affairs when the tea had cooled after the company had left. 5 Yet, even when Ji Qingqing brought men to search up and down the streets and alleys of Kudu and examine all entry and exit documents, they still never managed to find Qi Hualian and Ji Gang. They are definitely still in Kudu. Shen Zichuan closed the work documents on the desk. He has the intention to use teacher to threaten me. Sending them out of Kudu, if he did, would only make it harder for him to control and manipulate them. Teacher is a scholar, but Shifu is a worthy opponent with few equals. Qiao Tianya said, I've already sent men to secretly search for them these days. The search would surely throw up something. Shen Zichuan said nothing. Seeing Shen Zichuan deep in his own thoughts, Qiao Tianya was about to take his leave when Shen Zichuan called out to him, since there is no other business tonight, I'll make a trip to the Plum Blossom residence. There are many matters to be discussed. You should leave first and wait for me there. Ask Jiyu Jin who are those in the batch of people Shongyun Villa sold to Xue Xiuzhua. Qiao Tianya uttered an acknowledgement and took his leave. When he stepped out the door, he saw a few people resting in the courtyard. There were all seniors in the imperial bodyguards of 4th grade and above. Among them, there were even a few whose ancestors had been bestowed with titles and properties, and who could don python robes 6 and carry Shochuan blades. 7 Ji Qingqing had led his men to rest on the other side. Although everyone was an imperial bodyguard, Qiao Tianya could make out the subtle split into cliques among them. Shun Zechuan had advanced through the ranks too quickly within the last 6 months, which inevitably made others green with envy. Furthermore, with his close proximity to men in power on all sides, he had taken over the mantle of the Northern Judge, which could be considered to have established him as the top dog in the upper echelon of the imperial bodyguards for real. The web of connections between the men was as convoluted as a labyrinth. Everyone, even if picked at random, was of privileged background and title. When the new replaced the old, it was customary for them to swap pointers with one another. It was only because Shun Zechuan had been too busy with his official duties that he had yet to draw close to them. But once the busy spring farming season had passed, everyone was bound to see each other one way or another during their subsequent missions. Qiao Tianya's heart sank slightly. He let down the curtain and left ahead of Shun Zechuan. Xiao Qie had yet to return from the military drill grounds at Mount Feng, and only Ji Yujin was still at the Plum Blossom residence. Qiao Tianya drank half a cup of wine with him and made some inquiries into the matter of Shangyun Villa. A total of 16 people of similar ages. All of them were young boys and girls below the age of 20. Ji Yujin and Qiao Tianya sat on the railing at the bottom of the veranda. The weather was fine today, with the sight of green buds and sprouts filling their visions. He said, "As for their specific backgrounds and origins, I have already told Daozi to write them out and hand them over to the young master. Your master will be able to see it a little later. However, this is not an easy matter to investigate. These people are a motley crew, like a jumbled cluster of grass. There are no other similarities between them other than their ages. Doesn't this already illustrate the problem?" Qiao Tianya picked up that little porcelain cup that was half the size of a typical cup and drank up the wine. He frowned as he savored the taste of it. The harder this batch of people is to investigate, the more important they are. This wine is pretty good, but why use it with such a cup? It's not even the size of my finger. Drinking holds you up from your work. If you reek of wine when the masters return later, you're bound to get scolded. Ji Yujin did not dare to drink as liberally as he always did these few days after having received a dressing down from Xiao Qie the last time. He simply sat for a moment. The patrols in the Plum Blossom residence were under his charge, so he left just a short while later and let Qiao Tianya have fun by himself. Qiao Tianya sat alone on the veranda and drank his wine as he appreciated the sight of spring. There was no one around, and he enjoyed himself nonetheless. He remembered that his zither was still here, thus he thought of taking it out to play. He rose to his feet and made a detour carrying the tray in hand, passing through branches that looked like green mist when he suddenly heard the zither. Qiao Tianya followed the sound in search of it. He did not charge out hastily, but instead brushed aside the green mist and took a peek out of the corner of his eyes. The long walkway was facing the natural sunlight, and sitting underneath was a brightly illuminated man who was sitting cross-legged. This man's entire head of black hair was adorned with an aged wooden hairpin. He was not wearing a crown, and he was wearing a sky-blue wide-sleeved robe with a Jiawen bag 9 hanging from his waist. Qiao Tianya could not get a clear look at his face. All he could see was him idly plucking away at the strings. He would play a tune, then stop. A music score was laid out beside him. He was pondering it over when an grey-white kitten suddenly sprang onto his back and threaded its way around the sides of his neck to fish up locks of his hair with its paw to play with. This man carried the cat down and tucked it in his sleeve, his mind still on the zither. Qiao Tianya recognized the zither as his own. He stepped forward slowly and gradually came to see this man's face as his angle shifted. The willow catkins of the 4th lunar month in spring drifted, while the green velvet buds all hung out to dry under the resplendent sunlight. This man was fair. Unlike Shun Zechuan's icy fairness, which looked as though he was immersed in frost, this man seemed more like a smooth white jade placed under the sunlight of spring. He did not have Shun Zechuan's cutting-edge sharpness, nor did he have Shun Zechuan's breathtaking allure. But he was in a class of his own, ethereal and unforgettable. Qiao Tianya used to be a young master of a family of officials. In this moment, he recalled a poem his eldest sister-in-law had previously recited. Such is the mountain of rocks like jade, as is the forest of pines like jadeite. His unrivaled beauty, one of a kind, second to none, a man divine. Both of them had not even conversed with one another, and Qiao Tianya already knew who he was. Truly the epitome of a man of leisure. Xiao Tianya strode up the railings and set the tray down on the ground. No need to keep looking at the score for this tune. If you're keen to learn, I can teach you. This man lifted his eyes to look at him. He laughed and said, I think of wine, and the wine comes. I seek the tune, and the tune appears. Buddy, you're truly my lucky star. The springtime landscape in this residence is excellent. A pity no one appreciates it. It's fate that I get to encounter you while enjoying the sights of spring. And it's still fate that I get to listen to this melody. Bosom guests are hard to come by in this world. I'm no good at anything except playing the zither well. If you miss the opportunity that is me, then there will be no one else who is up to teaching you. Xiao Tianya poured wine for himself while standing. After drinking a cup, he tilted his chin at the man. So, are you learning or not? Serving one's teacher is akin to serving one's father. 11 This man put down the zither and dangled his jade pendant to tease the cat. He said in a composed and unhurried manner, I can acknowledge you as my teacher, but to be someone's teacher, you must first convince the person. Xiao Tianya stroked his slightly stubbled chin and said, I, Xiao Tianya, never lie. Acknowledge me if you're willing to believe me. Else, forget it. This man loosened his grip on the jade pendant and looked at Xiao Tianya again. After a while, he smiled and said, I believe you. By the time Xiao Qie returned to the Plum Blossom residence, it was already dark. It was only when he dismounted that Chen Yang remembered and said as he led the horse, Master, they said a few days ago that young Master Yarrow has returned. Although he avoided the banquet, he will call on us to pay us a visit. He's a hard one to track down. Who knows when his interest for a visit will come calling? Xiao Qie took off his dusty and sweat-soaked outer robe and strode through the door to enter. If he comes, tell the kitchen to prepare some light dishes for him. He has been with Secretariat Elder Hai long enough that he has grown accustomed to it and hardly consumes meat. Ji Jin came out to them, then followed Xiao Qie inside. Xiao Qie stroked Meng, who was on his shoulder, and said, Bring in some white meat and fresh water. It's tired out today too, is my man here? Ji Jin nodded and said, He arrived a little less than an hour ago. He's currently handling official affairs in the study. Xiao Qie asked, Has he taken his meal? Ji Jin replied, No. His Excellency specially told the kitchen that he'd wait for the young master to return before having dinner together. Xiao Qie looked at him as he turned his thumb ring around. Ji Jin got the hint and averted his gaze, not daring to stare at Xiao Qie further. But Xiao Qie's mood did indeed take a turn for the better. Before he entered the room, he took off Longli blade and tossed it to Ji Jin. Give the sheath a wipe. Xiao Qie pulled up the front of his clothes to take a sniff of the scent on his own body. Send it in a while. When it comes to sharpening the blade, I still ought to do it myself. Have someone keep an eye on the serving of dishes. There will be a lot going on tonight, but the water must be heated up enough. Where is Xiao Tianya? Have him take his master's python robe to the laundry room and scent it with incense before the morning court. That's all for now. You may go. Ji Jin acknowledged his command and withdrew, and Xiao Qie pushed the door open. Shun Zechuan had been inside listening for quite a while. He dipped the brush in ink without lifting his head and merely said, How virtuous. The second young master is truly a man after my own heart. Chapter 84, Wealth. Chapter 84, Wealth. Xiao Qie was conscious of the fact that he was reeking of sweat after having ran around the military drill grounds for the entire day, so he did not go around to the other side of the table but instead took his seat on this side. There were stacks of case files on the table, some of which were sealed with the Ministry of Justice's memorandum slip. From the time indicated on top, they were all from a very long time ago. You're investigating old cases. Xiao Qie put up one hand on the back of the chair and picked up the little bamboo fan that Shun Zechuan had set on the table to fiddle with. Just the Imperial Prisons cases alone took you half a month to investigate. Why are you even looking at the cases from the Ministry of Justice now? There was a vacuum in the Imperial Prison in the 4 years before the former emperor ascended to the throne. Shun Zechuan looked at the files. At that time, Ji Lei had Pan Rugi as his backing, so it's unlikely he would muck around to the point where he did not have a single assignment. But the imperial prison did not leave any case records behind, proving that many cases of that time could still uphold the standard judicial process of the three judicial offices' joint trial. Ji Lei could only follow behind the Ministry of Justice running odd jobs for them. What I mean is, Xiao Qie exerted a little force on two of his fingers to use the fan to block Shen Zichuan's view of the files and lifted his chin. What are we looking into the old cases for? It was also here we previously discussed the case in which Zhongguo's troops were defeated. Shen Zichuan set down the brush. I spoke of befriending a distant state while attacking one nearby. One, do you still remember? Xiao Qie withdrew the fan and rose to his feet. He sidestepped the table and walked towards the inner side of the bookshelf. After a while, he emerged, carrying a scroll of a map. Shen Zichuan pushed away the documents on the table, and Xiao Qie tossed out the scroll to spread it out on the table. It was an extremely detailed military topographic map. This is a treasure of mine I stashed away for special occasions. Xiao Qie used the fan to draw a circle around the location of the 6 prefectures of Zhongguo. I naturally remember all that you've said. You're referring to the fact that someone used the Biancha cavalry to knock out the 6 prefectures of Zhongguo, which lies close to Kudu. This is attacking a nearby state. Then, the Hua clan fell into decline, and the Empress Dowager was forced to marry Hua III to Chidong. This is befriending a distant state. If we put these two together, then we can see that it's to take away Libei's powers by subtle means, rendering it powerless so that Libei would be caught in a predicament where it has no support nearby and no assistance from afar. But the time such a game plan needs is too long, and the variables are countless. If the other party wants to ensure that every chess move he makes is without error, then he has to remain in a position where he can view the entire game. Shen Zichuan rose and slid his finger from Zhongguo on the map to Kudu. He has to be here. The former emperor reigned for 8 years, which is too short to hatch a plot for the defeat of the Zhongguo's troops. The time has to be pushed forward. Many things have happened during Emperor Guangcheng's reign in the era of Yongyi, and these incidents have more or less influenced the direction in which the situation moved. He has to be somewhere within. I'm thinking of using these old cases to find some clues. Xiao Qie looked at the map and said, it's hard to get a full view of it just from the files alone. You have to find someone who was involved, or someone who knows the details. Propping himself up, Shen Zichuan looked aside at him and said, I don't have such a person. Xiao Qie returned the fan to Shen Zichuan and said, on the contrary, I do have a candidate to recommend, but, what are you going to bribe me with? Shen Zichuan smiled and grasped the other end of the fan, but he did not take it away. Instead, he simply looked at him in this way and said, let me guess. The one you want to recommend to me is Yarrow Wenyu, right? He's a member of the Yarrow clan. He would indeed know better of the many incidents that had occurred during that period. What's more, he later went on to acknowledge Hai Liangyi as his teacher. Hai Liangyi has successively served in an official capacity in the Ministry of Justice and the Ministry of Personnel. He would, of course, know the details best. Xiao Qie pulled the fan closer. Or, do you not care to meet him? I've long heard of his name. Shen Zichuan said. Whether he truly has the capabilities or is simply all form and no substance, I will know after meeting him. I do want to meet him. But when will he come? After today, I'll be tied down with work for the latter half of the month. Everyone else is queuing up to present their visitation cards to him so that they can meet him. Which of them has such the prestige as His Excellency Shen? Xiao Qie said with a smile. He is like the banished immortal 3 who has fallen from heaven, not meant for me to use. So even if I rack my brain and try every means possible to play up to him, it'd be a futile effort. What Shen Zichuan said was the truth. He had indeed heard of Yarrow Wenyu, but if they were to put this man together with Xue Xiuzhua, he would rather choose Xue Xiuzhua. This was because what they were doing was secular work. There were simply too many sordid matters down here. So even if one were to praise such an otherworldly divine being to the skies, he still did not have the inclination to woo said person over to their side. Scholars were basically and practically useless. For being an official was no less carefree than the courtesan prostituting herself in a brothel. Flattering those above you and trampling those under you, ingratiating yourself with another, Taking a beating with a smile, each one of these acts was an art in itself. That Hai Liang-yi did not get Yarrow Wenyu to descend to this mundane world was already enough to get a glimpse of Yarrow Wenyu's temperament. Who could bear to hold an immortal down in the quagmire? Just let him remain free and happy as he always had been. But Xiao Qie thought differently. However, he was in no hurry to voice it out and only said, "I'm merely a casual acquaintance of his. He has friends all over the world, but those who can truly sit with him for a chat are few and far between. His courteous but distant exchange of pleasantries is just the same as yours. You can just meet each other briefly and make an impression on each other. Should a need arise in the future, you'd be able to make each other acquaintances." Hearing him put it this way, Shen Zichuan did not turn it down further. Xiao Qie would not recommend a person for no rhyme or reason. Shen Zichuan made a mental note of it, planning to get Xiao Tianya to free up some time later to meet him first. Xiao Qie had spoken with Shen Zichuan as soon as he entered. It was extremely hot at the moment. The sweat he had worked up riding the horse on the way here had yet to dry up, and the sky outside had already gone dark. Seeing as his temples were still wet, Shen Zichuan said, "Go take a bath and have a change of clothing. By the time you come out, you'll just be in time for dinner. We can discuss the other trivial matters later." Virtues. Xiao Qie lifted his leg to push aside the chair and suddenly bent over to hoist Shen Zichuan over his shoulder again. Being considerate in words is only considered half of it. Let's bathe together. We get to save time, economize effort, and conserve water. Shen Zichuan lowered his hand, wanting to correct the position of the brush that had been knocked askew. But Xiao Qie had already taken a stride out to walk away. The hot water at the back was prepared pretty fast. Once the curtain was pulled down, it remained there for close to 4 hours. No one dared to interrupt the flow of firewood throughout. Chen Yang, being the most tactful, could read the situation best. Seeing as Xiao Qie was about to take a bath, he instructed the kitchen to prepare the ingredients for the main dishes first, since there was no hurry to cook them as yet. Shen Zichuan understood one thing, which was that he could starve anyone but not Xiao Qie. Xiao Qie could not endure it the slightest. He would place all those days Shen Zichuan had owed him inside, demanding his repayment as he held him in his grip. He was full of vigor and energy, and whatever bit of capability Shen Zichuan had simply could not be compared to Xiao Qie's diligence and thirst for learning. "I know it all." Xiao Qie reached a hand out to rub Shen Zichuan's right earlobe and clung close to Shen Zichuan's ear to say, "There's no hurry to discuss Shi Hongshuan's matter tonight. You've been getting Ji Qingqing to scout around lately. Are you looking for Ji Gangshifu? The Imperial Army is keeping guard at the gates on our end. If there is an anomaly with the comings and goings, I'll send someone to notify you." Shen Zichuan reddened from the rubs. He propped his back against Xiao Qie's arm and closed his eyes to catch his breath, exposing his fair neck before him. His entire chest was heaving. Other than this, Xiao Qie fastened the earring for him. "This second young master will not talk about anything else tonight." Shen Zichuan leaned forward, and the waves built up, layer by layer. He had a feeling of having a full stomach, and on top of this, he tasted the pleasure and thrill of extreme abandon. It threw his consciousness into chaos, making him murmur vague words under his breath, so much that Xiao Qie, hearing him, went numb all over. Between them, there was no putting away the wine cups after taking a tiny sip, only making merry to their heart's content. 5. The undisguised desire was what they sought from the other. Both men needed that headlong rush of when they held each other. Every worry they had could all be washed away into oblivion by this extremely harmonious and passionate coupling. They never whispered sweet nothings in the most intense moment, when the surge of lust and desire for love interweaved. Instead, they replaced them with kisses in unspoken agreement. The impassioned it was, the more they had to kiss. The water in the bathroom splashed all over the ground, and the steamy water vapor covered all remaining light from the window. The night was so deep, so quiet, that other than Shen Zichuan's voice, Xiao Qie could not hear anything at all. He threw himself entirely into it, leaving nothing behind. By the time Xiao Qie finally had his fair share, he had already lost all track of time. He brushed away Shen Zichuan's thoroughly soaked hair and caressed Shen Zichuan's wet cheeks. Shen Zichuan lifted his fair neck high, hooked him closer, and licked his lips wet. Xiao Qie had yet to pull out. He kissed Shun Zichuan in this position and picked him up. Shun Zichuan let him kiss as he reached out his fingers to feel his way to the messy discharge. He rubbed it all on Xiao Qie's body until he was utterly exhausted and drained. After they were done, Shun Zichuan ate a little porridge and got stuffed several more mouthfuls of steamed twisted rolls by Xiao Qie. He had already changed into a clean inner garment. With Xiao Qie's robe draped over him, he watched Xiao Qie eat his meal. Xiao Qie had an astonishing appetite lately. Shun Zichuan did not know what he was doing over at the military drill grounds at Mount Feng, but he keenly sensed that Xiao Qie was not in a good mood today. Go sleep on the bed. Xiao Qie lifted his head to glance at Shun Zichuan and said, "You'll catch a cold if you lie prone here." Shun Zichuan moved a fish over and grasped his chopsticks to pick out the fish bones. He was indeed tired to the point he was dozing off, but he still took his time to say, "The repair and renovation of the military drill grounds have only just concluded, and there are enough funds to cover the costs. Looking at your expression though, is someone playing dirty tricks?" Xiao Qie ate for a moment with a calm expression before he said, "I want to add the blunderbuss 6 to the Imperial Army's arsenal." Tough. Shun Zichuan instantly knew the reason for his displeasure today. At present, the blunderbuss was only allocated to the 8 great training divisions. This stuff was valuable, and the Ministry of War would not assign it out easily, much less assign it to Xiao Qie. Xiao Qie had long set his eyes on them. The 8 great training divisions had consigned this batch of bronze blunderbuss to their arsenal, where they had been sitting idly all this while. He had taken a few out to play with the last time, and it was from that time onwards that he started harboring the intent. But Xiao Qie knew that this request of his would definitely hit a wall at the Ministry of War. Even Li Jianheng himself had no say in this matter, because it was of great significance, and the power to decide lay firmly in the hands of the Grand Secretary of the Grand Secretariat, Hai Liangyi. Shun Zichuan thought for a moment. He held out the fish meat with his chopsticks to Xiao Qie and said, "This thinking of yours in letting the Imperial Army test the waters in preparation for Libei's armored cavalry is too obvious. Considering the current situation in which they can't set you free, Hai Liangyi will no doubt disagree." Xiao Qie did not like to eat fish because he was too impatient to pick out the fish bones, but now that he tasted it, he found it to be still acceptable. He ate as much as Shun Zichuan fed him and only said when the chopsticks were set down, "Even if he doesn't agree, I'll still think of ways to get my hands on them. Libei has military craftsmen. With the blueprint in hand, they should be able to copy it, like drawing a tiger with a cat as a model. As long as they had the blueprint, everything else would be a breeze. It's just that this blueprint is not easy to get our hands on." Shun Zichuan rinsed his mouth from Xiao Qie's hands and thought for a moment before he continued, "Hai Liangyi keeps a pretty tight watch on this thing." But Xiao Qie was determined to have it, and the reason he had to have this thing was something Shun Zichuan understood the best. Hua Xiangyi was about to marry down to Chidong soon. Kudu's strategy of befriending a distant state while attacking one nearby was already beginning to take shape. Libei must make corresponding adjustments as soon as possible. The Libei armored cavalry was not an invincible army. The reason it remained infallible was that its 2 successive commanders-in-chief were resourceful and adaptable to changing circumstances. If the Qi clan really fell out with Libei because of the marriage alliance, then, other than considering strategies to deal with the Biancha cavalry, Libei would also need to consider tactics to deal with the Qi clan's infantry. The Minister of War, Chen Zhan, and Kong Qiu come from the same hometown. With this layer of connection, he could also be considered an official under Hai Liangyi. This man has some friendly relations with my father. He wouldn't necessarily even do my eldest brother a favor in the past. And now that it's come to me, recalling the displeasure of yesterday, Xiao Qie paused for a moment before he merely said, "There got to be another way somehow." Once Xiao Qie had finished his meal, Shun Zichuan extinguished the lamp. Both men lay on the bed, sharing a pillow. Shun Zichuan had a plan in his mind and spoke up, "It'll be hard to go through Chen Zhan. Since he is from the same hometown as Kong Qiu, then it means he's from Chidong. Between Chidong and Libei, he would already have an inherent bias towards one. Blunderbuss. The imperial bodyguards might have the blueprint." Xiao Qie pulled him over for an embrace. He closed his eyes and said, Shi Hongxian has only just died, and those keys have already become a masterless gold mine. Everyone is watching you now, they are all dying to rip you apart to search for them. And you just happen to incur your colleagues' jealousy and envy at present. You need not bother with this matter, look here. This second young master has a way. Shen Zichuan did not answer. Instead, he smiled. Xiao Qie slowly opened his eyes and said, those 2 million taels of silver will not enter Libei. I've already spoken to my eldest brother. The money will stop at Xizhou. You can take out these silvers anytime you go back there. You can't even play for nuts with 4 million taels. This second young master wants to give you even more. They were clearly trapped in kudu, yet the way he said it was so genuine and sincere. Perhaps Xiao Qie had told lies in the past, but he would not lie at this very moment. He was like a wolf pup collecting and hoarding up the stars, wanting to stuff it all to Shen Zichuan like that entire jewelry box of pearls and jade earrings. More often than not, he carried it out in action than to voice it with words. On hearing this, Shen Zichuan suddenly looked back and said, actually, it's not just 4 million. Shi Hongxian had indeed kept his keys securely hidden away. But his no sage. It would be inevitable for him to divulge a word or two here and there to people close to him after hearing some pillow talk. The clandestine love affair between his eldest sister-in-law and Shi Dan had gone on for quite some time. Both of them were actually tricking the secret out of him all along. 68 keys, 30 of which I know of. Meanwhile, Xiao Qie, who was so poor that he was on the verge of selling his residences, was a little shamed into anger. He turned over to block off Shen Zichuan's mouth, biting him until Shen Zichuan gasped lightly for breath. Xiao. Feeling the pain, Shen Zichuan was resentful. Xiao Qie pinched his chin to stop him from voicing it out. Both men toppled into the bedding, trading peremptory kisses. The wind outside the room came and went, leisurely and carefree, sending the wind chimes under the eaves tinkling. Ding Dao just happened to be on the rooftop feeding that plump sparrow of his. He had kept the sparrow in his sleeves, fishing it out from time to time to take a few looks at it. It was at this moment he heard the sound of the pillow being pushed off inside the room. He held the sparrow, wanting to stretch his head out for a look, but not daring to. Looking around, he saw his various gidge each in their own respective days. He gulped and said, I guess I'll tell you a story. My father previously wrote it in the book. There was this. Qiao Tianya and Jiyu Jin kept their voices down and said evenly, you shut up. Chapter 85, Assignment. Chapter 85, Assignment. With such a great misfortune befalling the Shi clan, and with Shi Hongxian having no children to take over the mantle, the shops in the various localities all temporarily suspended operations. The shopkeepers sent letters to Kudu, ready to set up a morning hall in their old home and to discuss plans for the future. Sitting on the chair, Shen Zichuan instructed, this journey is a far one to make, and you're also bringing along womenfolk. I don't feel reassured. Xiaowu, lead a few of our men to escort this elder brother Shi there. Shi Dan understood the meaning in Shen Zichuan's words. Afraid to doubt him, he hurriedly kowtowed to show his gratitude. There's only the eldest mistress who can head the Shi clan now. Shen Zichuan glanced at the account books before him and said, pay some attention when you go back. Other matters are of no rush, stabilize the current situation first. Don't lose your head. The deal we had discussed a few days back can be temporarily set aside as well. Once you obtain the keys, keep a low profile, and check the money vault's entryways. A man's wealth is his own ruin by rousing greed in others. Now that you have to look after such a big business and also manage the money vault, you're bound to encounter some trouble. Shi Dan naturally understood that he could only bank on Shen Zichuan for protection now. He was a smart man who, having followed Shi Hongxian, knew best to assess the situation. Going all out to work for Shen Zichuan was precisely to prevent himself from being regarded as a sacrificial chess piece to be discarded by the latter. With such guidance from Master, this lowly one dare not be sloppy. I'll do my best to stabilize the business for Master when I return to my hometown. Shi Hongxian trusted you that much all because you have the capabilities to speak of. He was overbearing and domineering in the past, and was only willing to get you to work on the accounts. But it's different now, and I'm giving you the chance to show your mettle. Shun Zichuan set the account book aside without looking at him. Be honest in your work and play by the rules, and there will be plenty of chances for you to be in charge in the future. But if you deceive me, even by just one word, then I will claim this tongue of yours. He said it lightly and breezily, but Shidan felt chilled to the marrow on hearing it. He hurriedly kowtowed again, not daring to look at Shun Zichuan further. It was noon after Shun Zichuan dismissed Shidan and when Ji Qingqing returned. Ji Qingqing entered and removed his blade, and the errand runner at the side came over to serve him tea, which he downed in one gulp. No one. Ji Qingqing pulled out a chair and sat down. He said, all the Shi clan's residences in Kudu have been thoroughly searched. There's no sign of teacher and Shifu whatsoever. Shun Zichuan said nothing as he leaned against the chair in silence with a displeased expression. Could they be in a manor outside the city? Ji Qingqing wiped his sweat. The Shi clan has many manors out there too. Who knows, he might really have hidden them outside. Shifu isn't teacher. It has been so long. He would surely think of a way to come back and see me. But he didn't. Shun Zichuan's heart sank. This shows that he's trapped somewhere, he can't come back. Ji Gang was not Chi Hualien, who was too weak to truss even a chicken. There was almost no one who was his match in Kudu. Perhaps there was a highly skilled expert among the men from the martial fraternity whom Shi Hongxian had hired with a large sum of money. But now that Shi Hongxian was dead, this group of martial artists should have already scattered and fled, busily dodging the pursuit of the imperial court. So, where in the world would they care about the detainees? Call Fei Sheng over. Shun Zichuan said, I have a mission for him. Ji Qingqing was momentarily stunned, after which he said, these people. Will he be willing to take it on? Since he is registered to serve in the imperial prison, Shun Zichuan raised his eyes, his gaze cold, then there is no unwilling for him to speak of. If these people cannot be useful to me, then leaving them around will only lead to disastrous consequences in the future. The imperial bodyguards had no lack of talents, but those like Jiyu Jin, who could scout everywhere and anywhere with just a pair of eyes and ears, were few and far between. This Fei Sheng was a son of common birth born of a concubine. He was an assistant commander, one who inherited his father's original post in recognition of his meritorious services. This person was the most outstanding in conducting searches, but he was previously one-upped and overshadowed by Qiao Tianya. He hung on until it was finally the 8th year in which he could be considered for promotion, and made many trips to Marquis Halian's place of the same clan. He initially thought himself to be the one to assume the position of Northern Judge. Who would expect Shun Zichuan to appear out of nowhere? The latter completely severed his future prospects, keeping him stagnant in his original post to await orders. Fei Sheng was different from Ji Qingqing. He knew more about the circuitous official circles than Ji Qingqing, who came from an impoverished family background. He could even strike up a conversation with Han Cheng, who was his superior, and he could be considered half a disciple of Han Cheng. So, he was not like Ji Qingqing and the likes who had a former friendship with Ji Gang. He totally did not give a damn about Ji Gang. At present, he was a heavyweight in the imperial bodyguards, one on mutually antagonistic terms with Shun Zichuan. When Shun Zichuan was at the height of his glory a few months earlier, he had lain low and did not face Shun Zichuan head-on. But friction had been gradually building up in recent days. Shun Zichuan had wasted too much time examining old cases, and half of that time was wasted on these people. They heeded only half of the instructions he handed down to them, and they were sloppy in their search and gathering of the case files. On his end, Shun Zichuan had been unable to match the records to the rain and had to personally make a trip to the Ministry of Justice before he could put it all in order. The atmosphere between both sides was already beginning to get explosively belligerent. Ji Qingqing knew they were capable, but he still choked with resentment to be compared to them in such a manner. Yet, he also understood he was inferior to them. Finding the men was now the top priority, so he did not object and rose to go call Fei Sheng. Ji Qingqing lifted the curtain and walked out to see Fei Sheng in another room drinking wine and playing the finger-guessing game with others. He stood beside the door and said, Assistant Commander Fei, please make your way to the central room. His Excellency is calling for you. It was as if Fei Sheng did not hear him as he stepped on the chair and shouted as he played with the others. For the entire room of people to be creating such a ruckus in broad daylight was truly a display of impropriety and disrespect. Ji Qingqing had never flared up or lost his temper at the others. He had been tagging along on missions with his old man ever since he was young, and he had seen all sorts of people. He knew how to take care of others, and he had a sense of propriety. He could make the acquaintances of even the squad commanders standing guard and errand runners below him in rank. No matter how uncomfortable he was at present, he would never at this time pull a long face and show his displeasure at the other party. As such, he strode through the door and grabbed the wine jar on the table to personally pour a cup for Fei Sheng. He said courteously, "It's nothing major, and it's not a mission on His Majesty's order either. It won't take up that much time." Tossing the peanuts, Fei Sheng said, "If it's not His Majesty's order, then just get one of the subordinates to go. What does it say of him to be singling out someone like me with rank and authority? That doesn't make sense, does it? His Excellency naturally has his own arrangements. Whether you take it up or not can be negotiated." Ji Qingqing poured a cup for himself and clinked cups with him. It has been hard on the various comrades to be checking the old cases these few days. Assistant Commander Fei has worked hard and achieved much. Here's a toast to you. Men of capabilities are always overworked. Please go. Fei Sheng did not care to work for Shen Zichuan. He also boasted of being Shen Zichuan's senior, so Shen Zichuan was not qualified enough to order him around. But when all was said and done, they had to work together. He had no reason to create a scene without good cause. It would not sound good either, if news of it were to make its way to Han Cheng. Fei Sheng drank this cup of wine and smiled insincerely at Ji Qingqing. Without even answering him, he took his own waste token from the table and turned around to leave. Left behind and given the cold shoulder, Ji Qingqing set down the wine cup and cupped his hands to the surrounding imperial bodyguards, each of whom wearing various expressions on their faces, and left too. The moment he retreated out, his own men also stood up. Ji Qingqing wiped his mouth and said, "Why are you all standing up? There's no need for formalities between us brothers. Sit." Xiaowu, who was of similar age to Ding Dao, could not refrain from wearing his heart on his sleeve. He said in anger and resentment, "Look at his eyes growing on top of his head. He walks like a tyrant, all so overbearing and puffed up with his own importance that he has no fear karma might hit him hard in the face someday. What kind of an honorable man is he, acting all like a snob? Bah. Qingji, why do we even put up with him? Remove his token and drag him out, then cover him with a sack and bash him up. See if he still doesn't learn to behave himself." Ji Qingqing rebuked, "What insolent remarks are you spouting? If news that we beat up our own people gets out, we will be making a mockery of ourselves." He looked at every one of them and continued, "We are all attending to official duties together. We mustn't leave any misunderstandings or unhappiness festering. Otherwise, how can we all look out for each other when we are on a mission? Since they look down on us, then we'll work harder to prove ourselves." Fei Sheng lifted the curtain to enter and sloppily paid his respects before the table. He still reeked of wine, the smell strong enough for Shen Zichuan to catch a whiff of it from where he was across the table. Without lifting his head, Shen Zichuan said, "Drinking on duty is punishable by a deduction from your salary, yes?" Seeing that Shen Zichuan did not get up, Fei Sheng pulled the chair over. But before his ass could touch the chair, Shen Zichuan looked at him. Shen Zichuan unhurriedly let out a smile. "Sit." Fei Sheng could not tell what he was up to. He sat down and asked, "What can I do for your Excellency, since you are looking for me?" Shen Zichuan replied, "There's an assignment that no one else can do except you." Seeing as he had something to ask of him, Fei Sheng could not help but relax. He touched the pipe in his sleeve pocket and started to put on airs, first saying, "Is it a prison assignment? If it's an order from the Commander-in-Chief, then pass me the official paperwork and I'll be able to work on it." Shen Zichuan tapped away the excess ink on the brush tip and said, "It's not a prison assignment, and it's not an order from the Commander-in-Chief." Fei Sheng struck the flint and bit down on his pipe as he laughed and said, "Then it's your Excellency's order? I can do it, but I still have a mission to keep track and record of late. Isn't this just in time for the 4th month? I have to keep an eye on the price fluctuations of Kudu's daily necessities of firewood, rice, oil, and salt. The so-called keep track and record was to have the imperial bodyguards record all minor and major matters in a book, including the prices of grains, rice, noodles, and tea. These were to be reported to Li Jianheng and Hai Liangyi whenever necessary. But this assignment did not have to be personally carried out by Fei Sheng. He was a fourth-grade assistant commander, and the only assignments in which he could be dispatched out were for arrests and fieldwork. By putting it this way, he was, in truth, not planning to take on the assignment. Why use an ox cleaver to kill a chicken? Having you do that is simply a waste of talent. Sun Zichuan said. I am a person of mediocre ability to begin with. I cannot be compared to such a naturally talented hero like your excellency. You are already a third-grade vice-commander at such a young age, and His Majesty looks upon you favorably. What's more, you are a man of elegance and poise. Fei Sheng blew out puffs of smoke. Men like us can only do some lowly work to muddle our way through. We don't dare to dream of anything else, and we don't dare to be one either. Wait for a few days. I'll have free time only after a few days. Sun Zichuan said, this assignment cannot wait. Fei Sheng moistened his dry throat and half leaned over to look at Sun Zichuan to say, then what can I do? Each matter has its own priorities. I have to finish the task at hand before I can take on your assignment. This is the rule set by Ji Wufan back then, and I can't break it. So, you'll have to wait. Sun Zichuan, having received that smoke right in his face, looked at how fearless his expression was and knocked the ashes away to the edge of the table. Capitalizing on his status, and thinking that Sun Zichuan could not keep him under control, Fei Sheng slid the chair away and prepared to bid him farewell. Sun Zichuan suddenly extended his fingers to tack a slip of paper before Fei Sheng and said, I can wait. But can the assistant commander wait? This year is your promotion year. But coincidentally, the Provincial Administration Commissioner of Jueshi, Jiang Qingshan, is about to enter the capital to report for work. Surely you understand the Grand Secretariat's intent by having Jiang Qingshan enter the capital at this point in time. He will be going to Zhongbua to be the person in charge, and this person lacks an Imperial Bodyguard's Inspector General by his side. So, is Assistant Commander Fei still busy? Jiang Qingshan was a provincial governor who was outstanding in his governance of the area within his jurisdiction, having forged ahead and turned Jueshi into Dazhou's granary. Libei's and Chidong's army provisions all came from him. This person was someone whom even Xiao Jiming and Qi Zhuyin could not afford to offend. Working for him meant that there would be nothing to worry about one's future prospects. Fei Sheng could not advance any further in ranks. He had to find external help. But because he was a son of common birth born of a concubine, he could not get to play together with all the bona fide direct descendants born of the principal wives like Han Jin, Fei Shuo, and Pan Lin. Without that layer of connection, he could not make his way up through the ranks. Being stuck in this position made him feel shitty all over. Otherwise, he would not greet Sun Zichuan with such biting sarcasm and mockery. Fei Sheng hurriedly extinguished the pipe and rubbed his palms at the sides of his legs. He bent over slightly and said to Sun Zichuan with a smile, look at me, not knowing what's good for me. What assignment? Tell me. Sun Zichuan said, I want you to turn over the entire kudu to search for 2 men. Search openly, or, Fei Sheng looked at Sun Zichuan and gradually cottoned on. He said, that's easily done. I'm good at this. Give me their descriptions, Your Excellency. 5 days. I'll definitely find them for you. Sun Zichuan lowered his voice and said, I'm only giving you 2 days. Fei Sheng looked at the slip of paper, clenched his teeth, and accepted,